Good afternoon, race fans, and welcome to the second event of the Champion Motorsports iRacing Team Endurance Series live from Sebring International Raceway. Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Burris, and with me in the booth is Rachel Whiteford, and along with our wonderful producer, Ryan Bauer, using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Rachel, we still continue our Florida swing here for the first two rounds of the championship, and we are at the home of endurance racing here in America. Why don't we talk a little bit about Sebring as well as what's in store for today?
Taylor, thank you, and welcome to everybody who's joining the broadcast here today. Sebring is a phenomenal circuit, of course. Major history here. Used to be a B-7 bomber base back in the Second World War. It was a training facility actually at the time, and this former airfield, a site where crews trained to join the fight over Europe and the Pacific, now hosts a very different kind of battle, and it's one we absolutely love. And when no one gets hurt, we hope, at least we could try. But it's going to be a fantastic race. Of course, multi-class racing at Sebring has a phenomenal twist. This may be a simple road course, but Taylor, this is essentially a street course without the buildings. This is tight, it's twisty, it's rough. It is a battle for these drivers to get a lap.
It certainly is, and especially for these drivers who have the low downforce. These cars are going to get beaten and battered with the bumps all over here, and as they say for Sebring, hashtag respect the bumps here at Sebring International Raceway as we continue on here for round two. Of course, to give you a quick little bit of information regarding today's race, we're going to take a look back at the season one event or season round one event of Daytona. Quick little update to see who is your top three for both the prototypes as well as the GTE class. Of course, the Revo satellite racing team of Paul Darling and David Williams was your race winner at Daytona, and they're looking to go back to back here this weekend. And Rachel, what about the GTE class? Who are we looking forward to seeing being one of the top guns for today's race?
High Performance Racing with Kurt Polker and Justin Hess. They took the win last time out at Daytona. And we then had, of course, SimHQ Motorsports 3, Paul Hale and Connor Denny. We had Cameron Bidwell and Alex LaRose for PG-13 Racing there as well. So we had some pretty strong runners in the GT class. In fact, that was one of those exciting we had last time out. But something we need to talk about, though, is our orange zone for this race, which is a much longer stretch on a much more difficult track. As you can see, it goes from the start line all the way to the exit of the curve. That is the entirety of essentially the street coursey part of Sebring. And so for that first lap, let's not forget there'll be more severe penalties for contact on lap one in that zone, which means they're going to be incredibly careful in a very dense field, in a very narrow, twisty track. This is going to be really hard.
It certainly is, Rachel. I mean, this track is very difficult, as is looking at this map. I mean, you have the hairpin that you have to worry about, where we'll see a lot of passes for position. And then, of course, a lot of drafting is going to be happening when they come down the Ullman Straight heading into Sunset Bend, which probably is the most seems simple to look at on a map or just driving at normal speeds. But when you're going at full speed with these LMP2 or GTE cars, it's going to be bumpy. You got to keep the car planted onto the racetrack. Otherwise, you're going to end up in either one of the tire barriers on either side of you.
Yeah, certainly are, of course, and those tire barriers will come out and bite you. We'll see a lot of people in them so far today. But let's not forget, we need to go over our details today and then a quick look at who is helping to bring this race to you. Taylor, our event details.
Well, it is, of course, a 150-minute race with two different classes. The LMP2, which is using the Dallara LMP2 that we recently got on the iRacing service, and the GTE class. Of course, the GTE class is something most people would be more familiar with, what you see on the roads today, but a little bit more high performance with aerodynamics and motor power. Of course, those will be using the BMW M8 along with the Corvette C8, Ferrari, as well as Porsche. So a wide variety of cars that you see, and pretty much one of the favorite classes for those who love all things GT racing. Of course, this is a rolling start event, so there will be taking the grid for rolling starts coming out of turn 17, no standing start, and it's going to be set in the morning time period. So we're going to start early in the morning and work our way up through the late afternoon here, or at the early noon part of today's race. And of course, these are open setup events, so drivers and teams get together with each other and try to build the perfect setup to try and survive this tricky and bumpy Sebring International Raceway.
Yeah, they certainly do. Let's not forget we have some amazing sponsors that help bring this event to you every month. Penguin RC Simulation are, of course, one of those with Complex SimWorks, Grid Finder, and Raceware. We'll talk more about those guys later, but thank you to them for helping to bring this to you. And I gotta say, Taylor, I don't know where you live, but in terms of seeing Ferrari 48s on the road, M8s, Corvette C8s, and Porsches, do you live in Orange County or perhaps St. Pete's?
More like Volusia County. So where I would be located at is just about 30 minutes south of Daytona International Speedway, for those of you who are new to the area. So we do see quite a lot of those in the Daytona, especially when the sports cars come to Daytona for the 24. But even here at Sebring, you can see them when that time of the year rolls around, which is actually not too far away, Rachel, before we see the 12 hours of Sebring next month.
Absolutely is, and I can't wait for that one to occur. Of course, a fantastic race. And I think a 24-hour race here would be very, very hard for these drivers with just how involved you are with driving a lap at this track. This is not a Daytona. Daytona is practically smooth and easy and memorable. This track, you have to be on your toes for the entire lap. In fact, no, the only place you can really relax is Ullman and start-finish. Otherwise, you're just constantly on the wheel here.
You certainly are. You have to be focused and remain alert at all times. As you see, our pole sitter right now, David Williams, and also our last round winner of the Revo Satellite Racing Dallara, working his way down the Ullman Straight, currently has set a time of a 145.787, absolutely flying in that Dallara LMP2. He's trying to hold off the CMS Pro Summit team of Jordan Johnson and the number 11 as he's working his way through the back half of the course, heading down the Ullman Straight. So those are your top two, with the inclusion of the TN10 Racing Carbon of Everett Paddock, who rounds out your podium positions for the starting order here tonight. Also, Rachel, how's things looking in the GTE? And looking at it right now, it seems like one of the drivers we just talked about earlier back up where he started.
Absolutely. Unified Performance Racing looking like they're going to be on pole so far in qualifying for GT. Renault Alpine Racing looking like a shock P2 at the moment with how things are looking. That Renault Corvette is actually currently running very quickly on track with Chrissy behind the wheel. PG13 Racing finished third last time out. They are currently sitting in third in qualifying, so a good look for them. We've got, of course, Bosphorus, SimHQ2, Kamikaze, Can-Am. We have Longhorn. Some great contenders, and I'm looking forward to seeing how these guys shake out, but it is early in qualifying here.
It certainly is. About 6 minutes are left in, or a little over less than 7 minutes left in qualifying right now here. So drivers are trying to get the best possible time that they can here early, trying to get the fuel burned off so that way they can get the tires in as well. Because critically, trying to get that second lap going for you is going to be critical as we watch on board with the Longhorn Racing, Mike Tyler, in that number 44 Ferrari. You ride on board with him as he works his way down to probably an area, Rachel, where we're going to see a lot of passes for position, whether it be for lap traffic or for the lead later on here, and that's the hairpin.
It's the only place you can dive up the inside. The old hairpin isn't just a simple hairpin corner. It tips out a lot more like a check mark, I think, perhaps, or you could almost say a square root symbol, because you're coming in on a long, heavy braking zone, and you exit, then you're kicking around to the left immediately after you turn into the right, you're kicking left again immediately, and then you're heading towards Fangio, so it becomes quite a convoluted section of the track, and it's definitely a place we've seen a lot of incidents as well, just like turn 2 being a prevalent location for that, as well as Sunset.
Certainly is, as you watch now to see the craft dinner racing of Dave Hazard in that number 43 Dallara LMP2 car, currently sitting in 10th position right now, about 2 seconds off the pace with a 147.802 as he comes through Sunset Bend. Look at that, Rachel, how bumpy it is for him right there as he's just trying to hold on off corner exit, but then will come down pit road, has to break down, and that's one of the things these drivers are going to have to realize coming out of turn 17, the final corner, Sunset Bend, is once you come out of there and you have to come down pit road, you have to get right on the binders in order to make pit road speed.
Yeah, it's a real tight cut to make it to pit road. The entrance is right just after the apex of the corner, really, so it's a very convoluted approach you have to make to really build up as much time as you can getting into pit road. You've got to sling it in, but if you're too fast in and not braking enough of that apex, you're going to find that you actually drift out too much to make the entrance. So never mind slowing up, it's just about hitting the entryway is the first problem really getting on pit road here. And it can be real tricky. There's some big bumps there in the middle of the track at Sunset.
Certainly is, especially when you're coming off corner exit. As trouble for Mike Tyler, who was just having some issues. Of course, Mike Tyler in that Ferrari. Looking at timing and score right now, currently sits 16th in class, 32nd overall in the GTE car of his Ferrari, but has to try again here. As you see, Thomas Zeiger in the TNT Racing Gold. He is trying to see if he can improve his lap time. Currently sits 11th position with a 148.466 as he comes through Sunset Bend. And for those of you who've never been to Sebring International Raceway, when you come here to this track and it's just around that sunset period, coming off the car, when the cars come through that area, is just absolutely gorgeous. You got to make sure you got to get a picture if you ever come to Sebring. But as we have about 4 minutes left to go on the clock, Rachel, anyone out there on the track that you're keeping an eye on?
Oh, absolutely. The usual suspects like Revo, TNT, CMS Pro, of course, SimHQ's teams, Unified, Renault, Alpine. They had a fantastic run last time out. There's some guys here who are truly phenomenal. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do, but it's some of the guys who really didn't do so well at Daytona who I think could make a big difference here today, because this track, being so very different, has a whole different set of qualities necessary. So I'm looking forward to being surprised.
Certainly is the case here as we keep an eye and seeing what will happen. It looks like everyone except for car number 19 has made their qualifying attempts here. So we'll have to keep track and see what will go on momentarily as we keep an eye on seeing if anybody else will join the track here.
I think all cars that we're going to get really here, right, Taylor, are looking like they've tried it. I think this is it now.
Certainly seems to be the case. So let's go ahead and see if we can get the unofficial results for the starting lineup here today, as we just double check from race officials to make sure we're good to go. And I believe we are. So by the looks of it, it's going to be Revo Satellite Racing with David Williams, your pole sitter for tonight's race here today at Sebring International Raceway with a 145.78. He will be ahead of Everett Paddock in the TNT Racing Carbon. CMS Pro Summit team of Jordan Johnson will be third, followed by the Pneumatic Motorsports Purple of Jimmy Hume in fourth. Fifth will be the Imperial Motorsports Shake team of Chris Pies. Sixth is going to be Rebellion Racing. Seventh will be the SimHQ Motorsports 1, followed by Pneumatic Motorsports Blue in 8th. Ninth position will be the TNT Racing Gold, and rounding out your top 10 is Team Cosmos with David Santiago. Starting in 11th position, the Craft Dinner Racing of Dave Hasser, followed by Wildfire Racing Dragon in 12th position. Penguin RC Complex SimSports starts in 13th with DDM Racing 14th. 15th is Hard Promise Racing and Riding Shotgun in the LMP2 class, WWZ Red, driven by Robert Cottle.
Heading up your GTE field today, on the pole for that class is Unified Performance Racing. In today's event, alongside them will be the Renault Alpine Racing team in their Corvette, along with PG13 Racing in third place, with Bosphorus in blue in fourth place, SimHQ Motorsports 2 in fifth place. Can-Am Racing 6th place today in GTE, with 7th going to Kamikaze, 8th Longhorn Racing Lone Star, 9th SimHQ Motorsports 3, 10 Can-Am Express, 11th place in GTE will be Team Breakfade, with 12th Can-Am Canucks, 13th All Balls Racing, 14th Triple R Racing, 15th place Last Minute Racing, 16th Longhorn Racing, NGP in 17th, 18th MMTR, and 19th and last and not qualifying today, Team Leonard Berg.
And with that, that gives you your full field rundown here for event number 2 of the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series from Sebring International Raceway, as we are getting ready to wind down the clock here and continue on our way to get the event started. And looking through to see here, as we're waiting for everything to go up and make sure everyone is good to go. Rachel, in the LMP2 class, you know, Revo Satellite Racing is going to be probably the team to watch, along with Imperial and CMS as well. What are some of the major contenders who we maybe didn't see do well at Daytona for the GTE class work their way up into the top podium positions for that class today?
I think some of the Can-Am teams could be ones to look at here, as well as Longhorn Racing. They had a pretty strong showing, but Bus Forest Motorsports Blue are the one my eyes are really on today. They had a great showing last time, but they were just a little bit hobbled by positioning. So they're one to keep an eye on. SimHQ 3, also good guys, as are the Can-Am crew. Those guys always on the edge of this thing. Looking forward to see how they go with it, but it's going to be a fight between the top three, of course. Unified, Renault, and PG13 will really make things interesting.
They certainly will. Of course, they have, for the LMP2 class, they have to go up against the Ravo Satellite Racing. Paul Darling going to be one of the heavy hitters here later on today in his LMP2 car, the number 67. We'll also have David Williams, who will start today's race in that 67 LMP2 car, as the field is now getting gridded up, ready to go racing here for 150 minutes around the most bumpiest race circuit, I would have to say, on the entire iRacing service, Sebring International Raceway, as the field is almost done, finished, filed up, waiting for, looks like, our pole sitter and a couple of other cars to get sorted out. So we'll give them a couple more minutes, and then one pace lap around the circuit before we turn them loose here for event number 2.
I certainly can't wait for this race to kick off. It's going to be a phenomenal event here today. That 150 minutes or 2.5 hours are going to be an amazing trip.
Certainly is, as we get ready to go. Of course, pit stops. Of course, this race 150 minutes or 85 laps for those. Where should we look at for as far as pit stops, Rachel, for at least our LMP2 and GTEs?
I think we're going to look at a typical 3 at this point. It's going to be definitely a bit more margin in this one. The track's rougher, they're braking a lot more, so rather than Daytona with a lot of throttling, I think they're off the gas a bit more here, so it could be stretched a little bit. Maybe 2 at the outside, probably 3, both.
Fair point. We'll be keeping an eye on that, and who knows, we may have a pit reporter down there to keep you all the information, so just stay tuned for more of that as we work our way through the first sections of the course. As the base car in that iRacing Porsche paint scheme comes through the field, working their way up towards the hairpin before they are turned loose once again here at Sebring. You know, Rachel, with sports car racing here at Sebring, we've seen a wide variety of different sports cars over the recent decades. Of course, we had the American Le Mans Series kicking things off here in America's major motorsports in the late 90s. And then, of course, we saw the combining of ALMS and Grand Am with the IMSA WeatherTech series that currently continues on today. But it seems like also, if you think about, go back a little further, open wheel racing also had a major impact. In fact, this used to be the home of the United States Grand Prix back in the 50s. Absolutely,
of course. And I will tell you, riding a low-slung car around this track, whether it's one of the old HPD cars we had, the ARX-01, or the IndyCar, the current IndyCar, or last generation DW12, low down here, this is a gnarly track. This place is spicy in a low-slung car. You are being thrown everywhere by this thing. It's definitely a perfect track for sports cars. For open wheelers, it's a little much, I think, but for the old school era of open wheel racing, the old Formula 1 and 50s, yeah, it was definitely a potentially amazing track. And it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
It certainly is not. In fact, for those who are fans of grassroots racing, this is the season opener for the SCCA Hoosier Super Tour Series that comes out here. So you have a wide variety of different cars, from MX-5 production cars to small class prototype racing, formula cars, you name it, they will come out here and race here as well in the middle part of January, which surprisingly, Rachel, Sebring in January may sound nice, but actually very quite cold.
Absolutely, yeah. Cold is probably the defining feature of Sebring this time of year. So it's just about warming up for these guys, but we're going to look forward to a good race today. Warm, though, on track, of course, because apparently in-game, let's see, it is May. So, yeah, they're getting off easy in-game.
Certainly is. In fact, quickly before the pace car turns off pit road, take a quick look at the weather right now. Currently, it's a clear 75 degrees. Track temp is a little bit hotter, about 85 degrees. So a little bit more sticky out there on the track surface. Winds from the northeast at 10 miles an hour and about 47% humidity. So not too muggy for a May day in Florida. Of Or say, actually, that's probably not the correct type of humidity. Usually we're expecting things about 80 to 90% humidity in May. So pace car is leading them through Sunset Bend for the final time under pace speed as we are about to turn them loose for 150 minutes around Sebring International Raceway. Pace car pulls off and Paul Darling will lead them to the green flag is out, and we are underway for event number 2 of the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series.
David? Early GTE by Unified Performance Racing. Justin Hess kicking it off in Sunset Bend now with a very early start. Renault got a good jump, but Bosphorus jumped PG13 here, moving them up to 3rd place before they hit turn number 1 here, and already going through the first couple of corners. Got a spinner in the GTE class. Big spin, and it's going to be Rebellion Racing. Oh, big impact.
Trouble indeed for the Rebellion Racing, as it is a log jam right there on the circuit.
GTE cars, they're stacked.
Yeah, it's complete. The track is completely blocked. As in a replay of that, this is going into turn number 2 here, as we'll watch John Taylor Tammy in that Rebellion. Looks like he just overshoots the corner, locks it up, loops around, and then unfortunately causes a big brake check.
Wait for the GTE cars to come in, though. Look at him. They see it coming, and they try to go around. He backs up into them, and they all end up piling into the... Look at it. It's a car park.
It certainly is, and it collects several major drivers. I mean, the Renault Alpine Corvette, also it looks like to be one of the Can-Am Express, PG13 Racing of Alex LaRose, several major heavy hitters involved in that incident.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say with that one, but he backed up right as they came to go around him. They tried to get off the middle of the track, but oh man, that changed the entire running order of GTE there. That completely changed everything. That changed the mid to front portion of the LMP2 as well. Like, that was a race-defining moment there.
It certainly is, but for one driver who survived, it is the Justin Hess who survived that one. He is in that Unified Performance Racing Ferrari, able to pull away and survive the melee that happened in the corner. A great effort for him, and now he has, I would say, about a half a second lead over Liam Radzitas in the Kamikaze, and then you have to go another 3 seconds back to Connor Denny in the SimHQ Motorsports 3 56 Corvette that is currently out on track. So he has a little bit of work to do early on.
Yeah, certainly does, and this is definitely the sort of shakeup that can happen in motor racing, so it's something people have to be waiting for, really, as Kamikaze currently running in 2nd place right now in the GTE class, with SimHQ 3 running up to 3rd place, Can-Am Express in 4th. This has shaken everything apart. For an example here, PG13 are down in 8th place in class, and we look down towards where Renault Alpine, they're like 14th. This has changed everything.
It certainly has right now as you ride on board with Alex LaRose and that PG13 Racing Corvette. No changes right now up front. It is still Revo Satellite Racing in LMP2 leading over the TNT Racing Carbon of Everett Paddock, and then the CMS Pro Summit team of Jordan Johnson. You round out your top 3. They pulled out by about 1.6 seconds over the rest of the field of the Matic at both the purple and blue team of Jimmy Hume and Jason Lundy, who are working together to try to see if they can catch up to the top 3 in LMP2.
Yes, and they're going to have to do that. It's going to take us a couple of laps before this thing really shakes out. This changed a lot of things for us today. Hard Promises Racing kind of ended up in there by accident. Rebellion, who were literally involved, those 2 cars took so long to get back racing. They're back mixed into the GTE fields. They're already passing through those cars. That's going to shake things up for us, but with this being spread out over a long amount of track and such a high number of front-end cars going into that pilot before those cars moved out of the way, we've ended up inverting our grid, essentially. Other than Unified Performance Racing, we flipped the grid in GTE.
This did, except
banged up and scratched and a few dents, and we have just inverted the grid. It's changed entirely. This is just... words are hard.
It certainly is. It's very impressive as we see a couple of cars coming down pit road. That is the DDM Racing of Matthew Overton in his 61 LMP2, but Right now, we are watching the battle. Looks like to be for the 7th position between Dave Hasser and Chris Pies, who's going to go the outside on the hairpin, try to make the pass, couldn't make it work as the Craft General Racing car is trying to hold off the Imperial Motorsports shake of Christopher Pies as he works to the inside as they make their way up through the corners right here. And this is going to be actually the Cunningham corner right there, turn number 10. He'll make the pass on the outside, move him up into 7th position.
Yeah, great move there by those guys as we're, of course, trying to reshuffle this business here today. Craft General Racing up in 7th place, making some good work with this one. Imperial Motorsports Shake, whenever I hear that team name, Taylor, I for some reason think Imperial, then I think Shake as in Arab Shake, not milkshake, which it is spelt like. So, but I keep getting that one backwards for some reason.
You certainly do. I mean, but of course, one thing that is quite a surprise right now is that battle for the race lead in the GTE class, Rachel. You have Liam Radzitis holding off a hard-charging Justin Hess. It's going to be BMW, Ferrari, and Chevrolet battling it out for the race lead as Connor Denny has caught up to the back bumper of the top two right now as they're working their way through the back half of the course, coming out of Le Mans corner, heading down the Ullman Straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Connor Denny is right up there with them, coming to Le Mans now, onto the Ullman Straight, and as Radzitis gets out of the way there, in fact, he's completely given up. I think he got a corner cut. I'm just going to quickly have a look back at what he did there, but I don't see a corner cut from him. Oh, no, it was 2 corners earlier. He was clear off the track on the apex of the preceding corner, that being 15, and that gave him a slowdown, which made him yield that lead, dropping Kamikaze down to 3rd place. Unified Performance being now back up to your race lead with SimHQ3 clear in 2nd place, and they've pulled a good gap here. Can-Am Express just coming across the line now. All Balls Racing along with Team Breakfade side by side into 1. Breakfade actually taking that inside line in 1 will make the place, but it's a comeback here with a late corner move, possibly by All Balls. They're going to go into that corner as deep as I think. No, they backed out there. Thank you. That would have been a bit risky. As through 2 they'll come now, the side of that turn 1 melee, and dropping down now through turn 6 Big Bend, running down towards the old hairpin. And you'll see as they come to this one, Taylor, what I mean by it being a square root symbol. You come in with a big long approach, and then rather than peeling out and accelerating, you're already turning again through Fangio and dropping down at this sideways. So it's hairpin immediately into chicane. It's one of the weirdest sections in a race circuit.
It certainly is, and it actually makes it one of the most interesting corners in all of motorsports, really. I mean, when you think of a normal hairpin, Rachel, you think just a switch, just a big deep turn that you have to make sure you turn around completely one way into another. But this one, you have to go right into a chicane, which is very difficult sometimes if you didn't get it wound up, and if you're going side by side into it. That's going to be very treacherous for some drivers if they don't hit their marks and make sure that they hold their line. Otherwise, they end up in the gravel.
Yeah, absolutely do, and it's not very much gravel here, it's grass, which unfortunately helps the car keep going to the outside, where they usually meet barrier. And they are not good bedfellows. That's like trying to paddle with gators, to use a Florida metaphor. You will end up losing a toe, or a bumper.
Or much more as we watch on and see one car hitting the grass right there. Can't be on the green stuff. It has to stay on the black stuff in order to do that. That's Vinny Lima in the NGP Motorsports BMW right on board with him as they go down the Ullman Straight. As they take a look into the Sunset Bend, almost possible pass for position right there, but decides to go single file through there, hitting the bumps as they come out of there. There's going to be that pass for position right in there. That is going to be, looks like, Alex LaRose. That's going to be Chris Hudson, who will go 3 wide as a P2 car goes to the outside. Matthew Overton will take over as Chris Hudson will give the yield weight position and then try the crossover out of turn number 1.
Yeah, it certainly is, and turn number 1's a great place for this to happen. It really gives you a lot of opportunity for a big dive in a braking zone. It's a very wide corner, but you have to remember it funnels down really tight to exit.
Certainly does, as we keep an eye on our race leaders in both classes. Currently right now, David Williams still holds on to the race lead in LMP2. You're not missing much. It is about a 2-second lead between him and Everett Pata as we now continue on. And then in GTE class, it is Justin Hess holding strong right now over the SimHQ Motorsports 3 Corvette of Connor Denny, as those two will battle it out for the GTE class honors.
Yeah, certainly are doing, and it's a lot closer than we really expected it to, but it's spread out towards the front of GTE now as Unified are pulling a good gap here over SimHQ Motorsports. 3 seconds on the clock right now between first and second. Kamikaze closing up now on SimHQ 3. And this has been a good run for them. They've had a really powerful performance so far. Looking back to two of our highest sitting cars, Bosphorus Blue are currently down in the 14th place in class. Not great for them. Renault Alpine, they're right down towards the rear, but they did take a good few hits in that impact. They've got front end right side damage and rear left, so it's looking like it's really impacting their car here. They are struggling, and I feel so bad for those guys.
Looking at Jack Chrissy and that Renault Alpine Racing Corvette, that number 69. Yeah, definitely a lot of damage that has to come down pit road soon to finish. And for those of you who are watching on our stream here on YouTube, talking about PG-13 Racing, regarding about Alex LaRose, yes, he did get a black flag, so he will be serving a drive-through penalty here during this event.
You know, we've also got the same issues for PG-13, front and rear end damage from that Constantina parking lot we had on lap 1, turn 2, and now it's right in our orange zone, so someone's going to be getting a spicy chat with race control after this thing and some penalty renos. Unfortunately, from what happened, it was a really tricky situation to really call because the entire thing was caused by avoidance of an accidental spin, so it's almost a no fault. However, I think it was made worse when the two LMP2 cars tried to pull apart and clear the track as the cars were already planning to go round them onto the grass. They saw the track was blocked. The GTE field went to go round to the outside right as the car backed up, unfortunately forcing them then into the wall, which led to the should we say day parking?
Yeah, I would say that would be some day parking right there, but we'll keep an eye and see how that will affect them later on in the going, Rachel, regarding those penalties. Can they recover? Of course, with the damage that we saw in the PG-13 Racing, it's going to be a tough order for them to try to get even a shot at maybe a top 10 finish. Of course, here at Sebring, we know a lot of things can happen in just one corner. We just saw that in the opening lap here for this race as we continue on here. Keeping an eye on our race leader of the GTE class, Justin Hess. He has broken overall into the top 15. He currently sits there trying to see if he can catch up, working his way through the field and hold off a hard-charging Connor Denny as the two come by start-finish line right now. Running considerably identical lap times, maybe a little bit faster that time for Justin Hess. Yeah, much faster. 156.5 compared to Connor Denny's 157. As they continue through the field, now it just bumped up to a 152, so a good flying lap time right there for the Wayne Hutchinson, or actually that was Wayne Hutchinson who just got by Connor Denny, so we're good to go there.
Yeah, certainly are, and they're doing what they can to try and push forwards with this one. Keep your eyes on this pit cycle. Will definitely change things. I think a lot of these teams have had to really evaluate what they do with this. And I have just noticed Alex LaRose just picked up a black flag, so that's going to be a trip for him down the pit road as Revo Satellite, of course, leading the way in GTE. Alex LaRose being behind the wheel of... pretty sure it's one of those big teams. I'm having one of those brain moments. You know how those happen?
I have those every day, Rachel. I mean, that's just the name of the game when it comes to that. We have our something going on, and then it just goes away, and we don't know when it'll ever come back, but
that was it.
There we go.
PG-13. I had one of those brain moments. I had to go look at the entry list for a second, but unfortunately, PG-13 just caught themselves a black flag. I'm not sure whether it's for damage or whether it's for something else that happened, but they're unfortunately in a pretty unfortunate spot here with this one. And we'll have to see how it goes, but they have got pretty meaty front-end damage, so this could be a terrible day out for that team with the flag.
It certainly can be right now as we look on and seeing the battle for the race lead. The gap between the top two has grown a little bit, shortened down between the top two and LMP2. David Williams has now about 1.5 second gap over Everett Paddock. As we continue on, it's going to be Revo Satellite Racing versus TNT Racing, the Carbon edition of the team as they come through the back half of the course, coming up looking like through, let's see here, that's going to be turn 15 as they work their way through 15 and 16 before they head to Le Mans, heading down the Ullman Straight. A good opportunity if Paddock can get a little bit closer, utilize the slipstream to try and pull him ever so closer, and it's just got even more interesting because, Rachel, our top two have caught lap traffic.
Yeah, they absolutely have, but this will definitely shake things up as they're starting to move through the GTE field there. Oh, nearly chopped off by the 88 machine there as they're moving up past NGP. Up now towards, I think that one being ahead of them would be SimHQ2, I think it was. And
Big trouble right there for Paddock. He gets clipped by one of the GTE cars. The GTE car was getting a little bit loose right there. That's Vinny Lima in his BMW. Gets a little bit loose in the middle of turn 1 and clips our second place number 82 LMP2 of Paddock, and that will send him to the pits.
it will. A brave move maybe going up the inside there. I don't know whether that was wise. I know he was trying to keep up with Revo Satellite Racing, but with the closing distances and the GT cars being on the limit, he was trying to stay wide, and he knew he wanted to come for the move. And I can't really blame the BMW there because he's trying to hold off the racing line to let the GT through. And we had, the BMW spun out. I struggled to blame the BMW, unfortunately, because he was offline to try and give him room, and it unsettled the car.
It certainly did, and that's some hard contact for Paddock now as he's still on pit road getting repairs done to his LMP2. But for Revo Satellite Racing, David Williams, that's a big sigh of relief as he now has extended his lead to Jordan Johnson of the CMS Pro Summit team by about 5.6 seconds. So he now has some breathing space, which allows him now to focus and take his time getting around this lap traffic. He doesn't have to rush or make major mistakes when working through the field right now, as you just see working now Jason Lundy trying to do the exact same thing, but a little bit more pressure on him as he's trying to keep up with Christopher Pies in that Imperial Motorsports.
What he can with this one to try and make it through here, as Imperial having a good day out considering what's happened so far in this race. It's definitely changing things up for them somewhat, as we currently have MMTR listed 2 laps down. They're on track, but they are down a couple. Team Leonard Burke did not start. All Balls Racing running towards the rear now. They've dropped back significantly after taking some damage at the rear of that field. Renault Alpine still struggling to find time as our PG-13. They started together, but unfortunately those 2 cars running significantly far back here, and I think turn 1's going to be a real conflict zone when it comes to GT versus LMP2 classes. The speed differences and the line choices available to them is going to be a real tough situation.
It certainly is, but for some of these drivers, they still have time, and of course they still also have to do a driver change, which could come into play for some of these teams here. I mean, maybe some teams decided to put in maybe not their best driver in the first half of the race, and then consider to send the second one out to try and see if they can make up ground. And of course, also when you come down pit road, get some of that damage repaired during the middle of that driver change could be a big help as well.
Yeah, it certainly could be, and I think it will make a big difference for them. It's just going to be tricky to see how this one can play forwards with those factors in mind, that they're now off schedule for some of these guys with damage, that the driver change will take much longer with the repairs they have to factor in here, and they're going to be playing for points. We were talking actually earlier before the broadcast about how we will not be really worrying about the points schedule so far after 1 round so far into 2 rounds, so we're not really looking at a race or championship defining event here. But suddenly we are, because a lot of these bigger teams are actually looking at some pretty poor results here, which is going to make every little thing they can get count.
It certainly is, and as a matter of fact, that could be a big help for some drivers like the Wildfire Racing Dragon team, currently holding on that 10th position of George Dean driving it right now. He's holding off Rebellion Racing and the SimHQ Motorsports 1. Both of those 2 teams are driven by John Taylor Tammy, who we talked about early on in lap 1 getting involved in that incident, and James Andrew in that SimHQ Motorsports 1 Dallara LMP2 as they work down the Ullman Straight heading into Sunset Bend. Andrew had a good run, but got a little bit loose through one of the corners there. I believe that was over towards Tower, but was able to recover and continue on. But for Dean, having a great run in that top 10 early on, but under heavy pressure from Tammy.
They really are there, and that's going to have a big impact for them. We're at what, 24 minutes into this race so far? And we're already looking at such a paradigm shift in what we've seen in this thing here, as eyes here on Rebellion Racing as they're moving through turn 1 there, just passing by SimHQ 1 just behind them. It's definitely shaken this event up a lot. We've got battling GTE cars ahead of them, that being PG-13 there side by side with NGP. heading down towards the old hairpin. We've got a real stack of cars here. We've got doubled up ahead, doubled up behind. LMP is trying to get through. Gonna go for a 2, maybe 3 wide through Fangio. That could be brave. Contact there between PG13 and Rebellion's car, as that was very nearly troublesome.
Watching that indeed right now is Taylor Tammy almost had a big issue right there trying to get around some of the GTE traffic right now as they work through, as he now is in that 10th position, about 6 seconds back from the Craft Dinner Racing of Dave Hasser. So we have a little bit of work to do as James Andrew going through the grass a little bit, coming through the section right here as he is trying to work his way through the GTE traffic as they come out of Tower, working their way down towards Bishop.
Yeah, they really are trying to do what they can with this, but Bishop's definitely not the corner for making moves in. It leads you into a really rough section here where you're having to really focus on the track ahead of you and setting up for Le Mans. So, as we got, big stack up there as it came out of Le Mans. And that would have been the car of Simic Q1. Nearly went into the back there of NGP as they filter past Triple R as well. We're getting some very impatient drivers here. With the time lost by some of these teams, we're seeing some real impatient racing.
We certainly are, and some of these drivers need to realize they still have, we don't even have 2 hours left. We have 2 hours and 9 minutes left in this race. We've only completed 12 laps here, and drivers are still trying to race like it's their less than an hour to go, but we still have a lot of racing. We still have pit stops to negotiate, and as we see, some drivers are being patient, like David Williams, but we see some such as James Andrew, George Dean, John Taylor Tammy being very aggressive early on after trying to make up ground after time lost in that opening stint.
And it's the wrong mentality to have in endurance racing. Worrying about time lost in an incident you can't control, it makes impatient moves, it makes impatient decisions, and as a racer you almost have to put it out of your mind and just race with a lot you now have, because next week somebody else may have a big problem. You gotta hope they do, because that's all you can really hope for. You just gotta focus on doing the best with what you've got, taking advantage of the situation you're currently in and getting the best result from what you could possibly achieve. You're not gonna win every race, you're not gonna finish every race. You're just gonna focus on maximizing everything you can get out of it where you currently are. Worrying about I was here before will get you nowhere. It doesn't matter where you started the podium. No one remembers who qualified where. It's irrelevant. They care about who won the race. Can you tell me who was third place starting for the Daytona 24 last year?
No, I certainly cannot.
Exactly.
I can't be quite honest.
But you could probably tell me who won it.
Yeah, of course. That would, of course. But that's the thing, and that's what some of these drivers need to realize. I mean, you can have the fastest car, the best set of drivers out there, Rachel, but yet you still have to make sure you finish the race in order to have a shot of even winning it and be there at the end. And that's what some of these drivers need to learn right now as we watch the number 4 Pneumatic Motorsports Blue and his teammate, the purple car in front of them of Jimmy Hune and Jason Lundy. They're actually doing something that we see a lot in sports car racing. 2-car teams that have multiple cars in their team that are the same, working together, working through traffic, not really passing each other, just following each other through the traffic, and then waiting till the end of the race to really battle it out if they choose to.
To use the most ancient adage in motorsports racing, to finish first, you must first finish.
Certainly you have to do that indeed, and especially at a track such as Sebring, as we watch these two work their way up through the field, not pushing the issue, taking their time, working through lap traffic as well as their competitors, and they have actually gained ground on Christopher Pides in that Imperial Motorsports shape car as they work through. Ooh, big trouble right there actually for the purple of Jimmy Hume. Gets a little bit of bump from, looks like one of the Texas Longhorn Racing Ferraris. Was that, I'm trying to see, was that Brett Steven? No, that was not Brett. That was actually Mike Tyler who got in back bumper of him. So a big issue right there for our Pneumatic Motorsports racing cars as we get a look at the iRTES racing replay. Ooh, a little bit of hitting the curbs, and there's the contact right there between Tyler. That'll send the Pneumatic Motorsports Solar up the racetrack. And we'll have to get a look at the rear end of that Delar to see what will happen. Jimmy Hume's car, looking at the car right now, no major damage, but that's got to provide some difficulties now for Jimmy Hume with that back rear end possibly messed up, including that diffuser.
Yeah, that's exactly the worst place for that sort of thing to happen, unfortunately, but it did, so they have to kind of work with what they've got in this situation, and it's just an unfortunate chain of events that that's where it occurred.
As we watch and see the field work their way through, you're on board with Chris Hudson in the Can-Am Racing. We talked about them earlier and doing a great run right now. Looks like he's following one of his teammates. Yep, Can-Am Express Mick Blue right now in that number 85. Two teammates working together right now, currently running in 5th and 6th in class, 21st and 22nd overall, trying to catch up to James Foster in the Team Brick Fade BMW. So 3 BMWs under a blanket as they work their way out of the hairpin, heading down the SPAC straightaway section of the course before, as we see a couple of LMP2s dive it to the inside.
Yeah, they're going for what they can here, and I think the diving actually we're seeing from the LMPs in this very tight course is everyone's so used to what we had at Daytona, whether it was the warm-up race, whether it was the actual first round. Everyone's so used to a big wide track with lots of passing opportunities, and we're here at a really narrow track where I'm not seeing a lot of patience, I'm not seeing a lot of respect for the difference in the cornering between these two classes, and we're seeing a little bit more of a aggressive, panicked race after that initial incident. I think it's still weighing heavily on the mind of a lot of these drivers.
Certainly is the case. I mean, if you look at it, these Dallara LMP2 cars, Rachel's, can hit speed in excess of 200 miles an hour, while these GTE cars, top speed about 180 really, as you ride on board with Jimmy Hume, that Motorsports Purple. I believe, let's see what the speed, watch the speed differential if he catches up to a GTE car. That's an LMP2 car in front of Jimmy Hume right now. That's his teammate of Jason Lundy in the Pneumatic Motorsports Blue, currently sitting that 4th position. But when you see these P2 cars and the GTE cars come together, you see a large speed differential between the two team cars, and just seeing how some drivers are just super aggressive right now. Here's an example as you ride on board with the 61 of Matthew Overton coming up to the back bumper of one of the Bofors Motorsports Porsches. Watch this down the Ullman Straight. You'll go to the skirt out to the outside of the track, dive it to the inside, and then just like he's standing still, easily makes that pass. That is critical, especially when it comes to going into the corners for some of these prototypes, trying to find a way to get around these GTE cars.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's something that we're seeing them kind of miss a little bit in this case, but it's the most important thing they've really got to be aware of is exactly that. It's the cornering, entry, middle portions is shaking up a tad with how these guys are really keeping an eye on this.
Certainly so, as you're on board with Rebellion Racing's John Taylor Tammy right now, about 44 seconds back from our race leader, David Williams, who still has about a 6-second lead over the CMS Pro Summit team of Jordan Johnson, as you are now trying to see him battling with Dave Hasser in the Craft Dinner Racing Dallara.
Yeah, they're trying to do what they can here, and the Craft Dinner machine and all its macaroni glory is trying to do its best here to pick up some spots. 9th place right now overall for them, with Rebellion right in their review mirror.
Ooh, big trouble right there for Brian Sohn right there. As let's see what happened to Sohn. That's in the Penguin RC Complex Simworks Dallara. Could he possibly hit one of those curbs wrong off the old Le Mans curve? The answer could be yes, indeed. Hits a little bit of that grass hard into the inside tire barriers, and thankfully does not collect any other cars. But for Brian Sohn, that's going to be a tough break.
Yeah, it's real tricky for them, unfortunately. It's one of those situations as they're trying to get themselves turned back around here. And the Penguin machine just, big contact initially with that. Unfortunate for them, but that's racing, folks. It happens as we pass the 30-minute mark in this thing. We actually entered our first 5th, shall we say, of the race completed today. And it's going to be a great opportunity, actually, for us to talk about the first of our sponsors here. It's going to, of course, be Penguin RC. If we've got that showing up for us on the screen so you guys can see it. Penguin RC, of course, making high-quality, affordable simulation products for all sim races. Their main products including wheels and button boxes. Crafted to excellence and care, their line of products is continually being expanded as the sim racing community expands, especially during these times. Their most popular unit, of course, is their PS Mod 1 wheel box, which is universal for almost any controller. Penguin RC won't produce anything at a price that they wouldn't personally pay for. See for yourself how beautifully manufactured their work is at their website, penguinrc.com. That is penguinrc.com. And I would tell you from personal experience, things like button boxes are a phenomenal addition to your sim experience. They're a cheap addition that makes a massive difference to your in-game performance. Access to things like your tire menus, your pit menus, your different screens you want to see for data. They will make a massive difference to how well you can perform on the track. And doing things like tweaking your setup and settings for various pit stop functions, tires, fuel. It's a humongous advantage, and it will really help make you a better driver. So check out Penguin RC, and that's penguinrc.com.
Of course, we can't thank them enough. Of course, they might have to go and take a look at that LMP2 car as it's back out onto the racetrack, sitting 17th overall, 16th in class, one lap down right now. And looking through the LMP2 field and GTE field, a couple of cars have come down pit road, but none of our top 5 in each class have yet to decide when to come down pit road. Of course, these LMP2 cars usually can be out on about a 45-minute stint. GTE cars, you're looking at about an hour, so we could be seeing at least a couple of pit stops happening here in the LMP2 class in about the next 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, I fully expect that's what we'll see in terms of how this thing flows out. So it's worth waiting to see where they come in, but I think it's going to be fairly in order. We will see a lot of damage repair though during this first cycle.
Currently, right now, you see our race leader, David Williams, and the Revo Satellite Racing team. One of the strongest sports car and endurance teams on the iRacing service. They've competed in top split events such as this year's iRacing Rolex 24, as well as other major motorsports series across the service. And that team, Revo Satellite Racing, has a wide, strong variety of strong competitors. I mean, you have David Williams, Paul Darling, who we'll see get in the car a little later on. Rachel, I used to watch Paul Darling in several other sports car racing series. Knows a thing or two about getting into these prototypes. Of course, used to see him in the LMP1s. So here in these LMP2s, he is certainly at home here in sports car racing.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And I'm excited to see what he can do with this stuff because he's really been a high-performing driver that's given us some fantastic racing. And this could be exactly what they need to pull some spots here because right now they're in recovery mode.
Certainly are, as we see another driver, David Santiago, in the number 42 in the Team Cosmos LMP2 car. Currently, right now, sits 7th overall and in class, having a good run right there. As he works his way through, he's about, I would say, about 10 seconds back from his next competitor of Thomas Zegger in the TNT Racing Gold LMP2 car right now, but has a little bit of pressure right now behind him of the Rebellion Racing of John Taylor Tammy, who's about a second back. So that's going to be a good battle for that 7th position here momentarily as they work their way through, heading into, it looks like to be Collier here right there. Riding on board with Taylor Tammy as they come now out through Tower, heading down, as you now see Justin Hess in the United Performance Racing Ferrari. He is pretty much out in no man's land right now, holding on to the race lead by about 12 seconds over Connor Denny in his Chevrolet Corvette of the SimHQ Motorsports 3.
Yeah, he's doing what he can with that one, and it's going to make things much better for them, but they're looking at a very strong performance today for SimHQ Motorsports, perhaps not one they expected. Of course, they qualified approximately 7 places lower down, and all of a sudden found themselves catapulted into a podium position that's theirs to defend. Along with Kamikaze, who've had a very, very strong run, starting 2 spots ahead of SimHQ 3, and they are currently running just behind them in 3rd.
Currently right now, that's Liam Bradzitis who's holding on in that Kamikaze BMW. Of course, for those of you who are fans of the PCA, the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series, which will be coming later on this year, of course, Liam Bradzitis is a Porsche competitor. Of course, seeing him out in the BMW is kind of funny to see him out there, but that must be his more preferred choice of car when it comes to sim racing on the iRacing service. Of course, there is a couple of other major heavy hitters from the PCA out today. Of course, Christopher Pies, Leif Peterson out in 3rd position in the LMP2 class. And then, of course, some other people who may be familiar when it comes to the scene of sports car racing here on the iRacing service. Kurt Poulter and Justin Hess, who we talked about earlier, who are the defending race winners from the previous round, looking to go back-to-back. Currently, Justin Hess holding on that race lead in his Ferrari. in the unified performance racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will definitely make a big difference for them for this thing. It could really show them a good opportunity to get some points here on the table. And one of the biggest teams that's leapt forwards is Breakfade. They started down towards the rear of their class. And right now, they're running in 4th place, which is a huge thing for them. This is something they never really expected. They've got a good gap to Can-Am Racing behind them, a couple of seconds. Longhorn behind them, even further back. So it's a defensible spot, although I'm expecting Can-Am Racing will be kind of ejecting themselves forwards as this goes on. They've been closing down that BMW over the last couple of laps, so it could be a good advantage.
Well, currently, right now, the biggest mover in GTE class is that number 56 of Connor Yenny in the SimHQ Motorsports 3 Corvette. Started 25th overall, has worked his way up into 18th, which puts him second in class right now. So a great move for him as we look at the LMP2 class, looking through the field right now. The biggest mover out of that class has to go to the Pneumatic Motorsports Blue. They started 8th, are sitting in 4th position right now. So a 4-spot gain for that LMP2 car right now as they work their way up through the field. Of course, that is driven by Jason Lundy right now, sitting in that 3rd spot as they are working their way up into the top 2 as CMS Pro has made their first pit stop. So the first car inside the top 5 has blinked.
Yeah, that'll make a big change for them. That will really kind of throw things up on the cards with how we run this cycle, and that will be a big advantage for them. I think an early stop here will be actually really advantageous.
Ooh, a big slide right there for Jordan Johnson as he's trying to get back out on the track. Going to lose a couple of more spots right now as he has dropped back to the 8th position. About 9 seconds back from his competitor of Dave Hasser as he is struggling right now with those fresh tires. Cold temperatures on these tires, of course, here in sports car racing in America. They don't use tire warmers, so they have to get everything going the hard way using the track and, of course, the momentum of the tires on these cars to build up heat.
Yes, that is, and that's going to be the big trick, of course. You've got a very busy track to work with, and it could definitely make things a lot more hectic for them. Trying to warm those tires and trying to defend against either being passed or having to let people through, passing people that are slower. So it could usually lead to mistakes in those cases, especially on a track that's as tight as this.
Certainly is, as we watch him go around the Renault Alpine Racing of Jack Chrissy in his Corvette down the Ullman Straight heading into Sunset Bend. Has now finally got a little bit of breathing room as we see a couple of more cars come down pit road. Jason Lundy, who we just talked about, he has come down pit road to get service required on his LMP2. As we keep an eye on the rest of the LMP2 field right now, no major other competitors towards the front half of the field. Team Cosmos, David Santiago on pit road.
Yeah, it's a good start for them to come down here and get that service. Pneumatic Blue exiting pit road now, just ahead of your GTE leader. Or just behind them now, actually. Unified Performance Racing will pass them in no time. As Purple just up ahead of them on the track. Revo, we're going to see them jump likely maybe this time, I think. David A. Williams passing the Longhorn car on the way down the Ullman Straight, heading into Sunset now. Will this be the time when they bite for pit road? It's a very wide entry. He's going to not do it this time by. A good wide track out there, coming across the line one more time. And Revo Satellite still performing very good here.
Got a good battle right now in the GTE class for P4 between James Foster and Chris Hudson. Team Breakfade versus Can-Am Racing. 2 BMWs battling it out for the 4th position as they come through turn number 1. A big send right there for Hudson as he looks to the inside heading into turn number 2.
Yeah, they're going for a good one in this one for turn 2. Gives them a good opportunity for a nice battle on the track here, but it's a mix of tires at this point, so it's going to make things a bit more interesting for them. As we have Imperial Shake on pit road now, heading to their box.
Christopher Pye is getting into his pit box along with the Pneumatic Motorsports Purple of Jimmy Hume coming down pit road, waiting to see if the Rebellion will come down. Rebellion Racing is in pit road. So that will now allow CMS Pro Summit Team Jordan Johnson to work his way back into 2nd place as we wait to see when will the Revo Satellite Racing team of David Williams come down pit road. He's currently on the back half of the track right now, about 25 seconds plus Now a minute between the top two of CMS and Revo Satellite Racing, so that will be an interesting battle to see, because this could be the opportune time to do that. He has a minute lead over Jordan Johnson. If he comes down pit road now, he could have a good shot to maintain the race lead.
Yeah, absolutely could, and this could be a great time for him to hold that too, because it's much more difficult to pass here on this track, making it a much more tricky proposition really for our drivers. Will we see Williams come down this time? A lot of the front runners have already pitted. Is he running to what they're doing, or is he running to his own strategy? That's going to tell us a lot here, as he will come down this time. Yes.
Oh, big checkup right there. Contact. Ooh, big issues.
I believe with... I was trying to work out who that was on pit road there. WWZ Red. Okay, so that was a little bit of bullying there by Revo Sim Racing. A much faster entry, and the kind of entry probably was choked up a little bit early by WWZ jumping on the pit limiter too soon, perhaps. Not what he wanted.
Certainly not so, and possible damage to that number 67 Revo Satellite Racing. We'll keep an eye and see what will happen, but that will possibly cost him the race lead. Jordan Johnson's now coming towards the Lamar curve right now, heading down the Ullman Straight here. So we'll see what the timing and scoring will be right now. We still watch as David Williams still is on pit road. No driver change yet. We're still waiting for him to be released as Jordan Johnson is halfway down Ullman Straight.
Yeah, that was interesting, I'll be honest. I'm not quite sure what that was, but hey, these things happen, I guess. Yes, second place, Imperial Shake have pitted. They're coming down pit road, but they are still going to be behind Revo, who now pass through turn 1 and back out onto their exit lap here. Unified Performance behind them now. We're going to see a longer run here just by the GTE field, I expect. We're going to see maybe another 10 minutes from the majority of them on the track. They'll simply just run a lot longer overall, as the tanks on those cars a little bit more efficient, especially on a track where they're not wide open throttle the entire time like Daytona. So we should see a bit of a gap before they come down pit road.
Of course, we did see, it looks like no tires were taken for the Revo Satellite Racing team. Smart move for them after that incident, just get the damage repair and continue on their way. Some of the drivers talked earlier about double stinting the tires early on, Rachel. Is that possibly the best idea for these LMP2s?
I think we'll see that. I think we'll see that in GT specifically, because whilst I'd say that's more of an issue at Daytona, I definitely think we'll see some of it happening here. Not through the entire field perhaps, but if you're in a comfortable position, I think you could afford to. It will give you that time barrier.
Certainly is. We'll keep an eye on that battle for position as they work their way through the field right now. Justin Hess, your race leader in GTE, with, of course, David Williams still maintaining the race lead by about 8 seconds over Jordan Johnson as they continue on. 23 laps completed, an hour 47 left to go on the clock here for Sebring International Raceway's event number 2 for the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series, as it is, of course, the LMP2s and GTE cars that you see out on the race circuit right now, like you would see in normal sports car racing, whether it be in America or Europe. And of course, a lot of things are happening in the world of sports car racing kicking off. And of course, with the recent addition, possibly in the future, of LMDH, Rachel, that just makes the world of sports car racing more unified in the future.
Absolutely does. And that's a major thing for them, of course. Anything that helps bring it closer together, I think, will be a big advantage in sports car racing. So it's something we need to see how it plays forward, of course. But anything that really kind of furthers the whole series and the discipline, if you will, I think it's a big thing, because endurance racing is in a world where it has that potential to be the big thing. It's gaining in popularity, it's gaining in its potential to be the most exciting form of racing, and I think people are starting to see that.
Certainly is. In fact, the Rolex 24 that happened earlier this year was actually probably was considered in ratings one of the most popular races of the year right there, as we have a replay of an incident that just happened. That looks like to be the 79 of WWZ Red, Robert Cottle, who's had a trouble on the track. He's actually getting ready to be passed by second place driver Jordan Johnson of the CMS Pro Summit team. Goes wide off the track through the grass, and looks like Johnson will get through cleanly and loops it around, just barely gets by before Cottle loops it around into the tire barriers.
Yeah, that's not great, unfortunately for them, but this happens in motor racing. It's been a very hectic one today compared to Daytona.
Certainly has been, and especially a wild ride for Robert Cottle, of course, and getting involved with both the leader and second place drivers here in the early goings of today's race. As we watch another driver who's had a fun time today, that's one of the Longhorn Racing teams, Brett Stevens, the Lone Star Ferrari, as he is currently sitting in the 6th position, trying to catch up to James Foster in the Break Fade BMW to get into the top 5 as they make the run down towards the hairpin. A good opportunity to see if Stevens can make the pass. He's going to stay tucked up behind him, takes a look, peek, decides to follow through as they enter the hairpin.
Yeah, it's worth a look here, and I'm keeping my eyes here on Longhorn as they come up towards Break Fade. It's looking like a good shot for them. The tires are good right now. It's a great opportunity for Stevens to take advantage of this one here and do something with it, but where you do it's another matter. I think Ullman would be the best bet here. This back section up through Cunningham, Collier up towards Tower, really not the best location for it. It's not where I'd try and make a move, especially not to run down through Bishop and towards 15. Le Mans or down Ullman into Sunset would be my call. This is where I'd take that move. It's the best passing opportunity, it's the cleanest and saves you time. Because trying to pass someone through corners, just it eats up the gap to the cars behind and widens it to the cars in front.
Now, Rachel, both of us have competed in sports car endurance races on the iRacing service. For me personally, I like to try and wait for the drivers ahead of me to make that mistake. When do you suppose it's the right time for a driver to consider waiting for that person in front of you to make the mistake, or to just go ahead and make the pass and make the moves on your own?
I think it's a combination of the two. You've got to basically be in a mindset of taking advantage of whatever happens, so you're a bit like a motorsports raccoon in a way. Everybody's trash is your favorite thing, but you've also got to be able to know when is a good time to strike as well. You want to be racing people, but you also want that racing to be a secondary factor on top of the overall making the race. Your strategy, how long do your tires last and how well you make them last, how fuel efficient you can be whilst maintaining race speed will be huge factors in terms of how well you can do in the race overall, because you'll pass more people in a pit cycle executing well. If you've managed to make those tires last and you've had a good run, and you have a great run, of course, after you've taken tires and fuel with a great entry and exit from pit road, that could gain you more spots than passing on the track and less dangerous. It's all about managing risk in endurance racing. You're focusing on the end goal there. Whatever happens in the middle is semi-irrelevant. You've just got to make it to that end point as far up the list as you can go. So it's a combination of dodging other people's wrecks, picking up things when they make mistakes, being consistent. I've made this example last week at Daytona, but as a mountain biker, I like to compare it to enduro mountain biking, which is multiple stages over a day, and downhill. Downhill's one run. So downhill's like your sprint racing. It's the one where you will do that one run, and that's all that counts. You give it 110%. Enduro, you're giving each stage 95%, 90%, because the next ones matter. In a season like this one, the overall points matter. So getting those average great finishes are going to be way more important than winning one round and dumping it in 4.
Certainly a lot to take in for these drivers here as we still watch that battle for the 5th position right here as they work down the Ullman Straight. Possible pass could be coming into play.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a factor, of course, but we've not really seen Longhorn Lone Star go for anything just yet. They're still sitting... Oh, no, they got the inside. Right as I said, they weren't going to go for it. They come out of Sunset. Drag run to the line here. Advantage is unfortunately going to be on Break Fade as they have the inside for turn 1, although we could see a good opportunity for a crossover. He goes very wide. Stevens goes very, very wide. Goes for that crossover, approaching 1 right as we get a approach by Revo Satellite who say, excuse me, I'm going to come through here no matter what. This is my corner. But that's a very smart move by Williams. Revo being patient, not forcing their way through because I have to. We've got 8 seconds on CMS Pro Summit, so it's not a huge deal. They can afford to wait. Coming out of Big Ben, they'll go for that run down to the old hairpin as it's been a smarter play there. That's what I call smart prototype racing. You pass when you can, not when you want to.
Certainly is, and of course, the next round of the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series is going to be at another more technical, interesting circuit. We're heading to Le Mans. March 21st will be the event number 3 for the series as we continue on this 5-round championship. And I gotta say, Le Mans is going to be phenomenal racing, and I kind of hope we go into the night because there's no better racing to watch than the 24 hours of Le Mans at night.
Oh, that's going to be amazing. And Le Mans at night is a phenomenal experience. It's almost as spiritual as motor racing can get. Between that and honestly, there's nothing quite as tranquil as middle of the night. We were talking about this again before the broadcast, but there is something spiritual about being at a race circuit in the middle of the night. The early hours of the morning, 1 a.m. to about 4 a.m., those quiet, dead hours during an endurance race are some of the most truly spiritual in motor racing. If that's such a thing, and I think it is. But you don't ever feel as close to the racing as you do at those times. I remember being on a pit road at 4 a.m. once, and it was windy, quiet, apart from the roar of the cars in the distance, and every now and again a car would come racing down out of nowhere. The pit crew would come racing out of their garage, service the car, and off they go. And it was just, wow. You know, it was this real emotional, powerful feeling of nighttime racing. Everything just felt so calm and so thought out and organized. It was a really, really beautiful experience.
Well, while we wait, watch, and see and look forward to Le Mans, let's take a look at the sights and sounds here at Sebring International Raceway. Welcome back to coverage of the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series event number 2 live from the virtual Sebring International Raceway. We are about to bring you through the field presented by, of course, the Penguin RC. And of course, we can't thank Penguin RC Simulations. And Rachel, you gotta love those button boxes that they provide. But tell us a little bit more about them before we go through the field.
I did this a minute ago, but I'll remind you, of course. We literally covered Penguin RC about 30 minutes ago. But they make high-quality button boxes, of course, and other simulation products. Their most popular, of course, being the PS Mod 1 wheel box, universal for pretty much every controller. You can check out more there, of course, on penguinrc.com. And it's got about time for our Penguin RC race report. So let's go run down that field.
Let's, of course, go through the field here as we see our race leader overall and in prototypes. David Williams in the Revo Satellite Racing, a dominant performance, has led since the drop of the green flag here. He has about a 12.2 second lead over our second place driver in LMP2, the CMS Pro Summit team of Jordan Johnson. He's had a little bit of an interesting race trying to work his way through the field here today, as he is now back up into second place after being as low as 8 after pit stops. Moving a little further on, rounding out your podium positions is the PCA duo of Christopher Pies and Leif Peterson in that Imperial Motorsports Shake LMP2. Of course, Chris Pies, for those of you fans of PCA, Mr. Chip's probably going to be out there crew chiefing that P2 car to try to bring it home to a strong another finish here today at Sebring. A little further back in 4th position, the number 4 of the Pneumatic Motorsports Blue, Jason Lundy, who's been having a quiet run, working together with his team as they try to work their way into the top 5. He's being followed by his teammate, the sister car of the Pneumatic Motorsports Purple. Jimmy Hume is in that car. Of course, had a little bit of issues earlier on, who had some contact with the Ferrari heading out of some of the major corners here at Sebring, but was able to recover nicely, sitting in 5th position. Go a ways further back, about 18 seconds, you will find the TNT Racing Gold of Thomas Zegger. Quiet run for him right now as he is just trying to mosey on through the top 10 finish here today at Sebring, and completely clean race car. That's something you like to see when it comes to sports car and endurance racing. It's fair to say, though, another driver who has had an interesting day and has a car beaten and banged up a little bit. The Rebellion Racing of John Taylor Tammy, involved in a lap 1 incident heading into turn number 2, blocking the track, has recovered nicely. Currently sits in that 7th position as he holds on and tries to see if he can gain any more positions here today. Moving on into 8th position, you will find Drake Bergone in the Team Cosmos. We just saw a driver change. This is the first driver change of the LMP2 class as Team Cosmos holds on to 8th position. Moving down to 9th position, the Craft Dinner Racing of Dave Hesser has had a quiet race here as they continue on working through the field, as they've been inside the top 10 since the drop of the green flag. A little further back, rounding out your top 10, SimHQ Motorsports 1, James Andrew has had an interesting race battling with drivers such as Dave Hasser. After having some issues early on, has able to recover nicely right now after starting 7th, currently running 10th, and the last car on the lead lap overall. In 11th, you will find the TNT Racing Carbon of Everett Paddock. Paddock has had a little bit of difficult runs, had some issues with lap traffic after being as high as 2nd place early on in the race, has fallen back to being 1 lap down. Moving on into 12th position, the DDM Racing of Douglas Hintz sits in the 12th position, also 1 lap down, but has gained positions after starting 14th. So a great effort and recovery for the 61 machine. Sitting 13th, you will find Robert Cottle in the WWZ Red Racing LMP2 car. Had some issues with our top 2 early on in the going between our race leader and our 2nd place driver of Jordan Johnson early on a few moments ago, but is able to maintain positions working his way through the field. 14th, we'll find the Hard Promise Racing of Javier Perez Torres in that number 17. They started in 15th in overall and in class, currently holds on to that 14th position after gaining 1 spot. Of course, our 15th position is the main title sponsor of our race support, the Penguin RC Complex SimWorks Brion Sohn holds on to that position, has had a tough break early on in the going, but still trying to battle on here today. 16th and our last car in the LMP2 class, 2 laps down, unfortunately for them. The Wildfire Racing Dragon having a tough break and actually quite slow on the track. That's driven by Calvin Southgate as he holds on, trying to see if he can fight his way back up through the field. And Rachel, the GTE battles for the race positions are looking good, but we also have pit stops going on.
We do actually. GTE pit stops have begun. Kamikaze hit pit road already. They are currently flagged in the lead because of that. But they've had Unified Performance Racing phenomenal run today. Justin Hess behind the wheel there. They dodged the lap 1 chaos early on to give them a really, really strong performance as they had last time, winners last time out, looking strong for another one today. Down in second place in class is Team Brake Fade right now. They had a strong outing today from a very poor start. Towards the rear of our pack initially, they dodged the carnage and they managed to get themselves into an overall second place right now, which has been incredibly great for that team in terms of their overall season performance so far. Kamikaze Racing there in third place, and Liam Rudskis behind the wheel of that machine, doing a great job today. They've had a big leapfrog as well because of that early incident, put them up into a combative third place overall in our field, really giving them a strong outing in today's event. SimHQ3 with Paul Hale behind the wheel, also looking like they've had a good race as things stand, backing up what they had last time out at Daytona, where they had a very strong overall outing. Bosphorus Blue currently running now in 5th place in class. Burke Oddsmere, I apologize, Burke. They have had a very good race today. Quiet mostly, they've been in the middle of the pack. Not too much happening with them on the track, but they've managed to keep themselves clean, which has been a hugely important factor. We've got Can-Am Racing with Chris Hudson behind the wheel. They've been up and down so far. They've been doing a lot of battling with Longhorn Lone Star today. In fact, that's where they are on track right now. You can see them as they've had a very active race in that BMW, putting on some serious performance. And speaking of performances behind them, there's, well, it's apparently right now Renault Alpine, despite not being the car behind them. Renault Alpine caught in an early incident in the parking lot inside turn 2. They've had a big recovery drive so far today, and they've pit cycles helping that, but they haven't pitted yet, so they're still very much in a position of being off the order right now. Longhorn Lone Star we were just talking about with Brett. It was actually Brett Stevens behind the wheel. Now David Anderson, they've pitted already and done their driver change. A very competitive mid-pack run today from Longhorn Lone Star. Battling most of the day, of course, that we mentioned there was the Can-Am Racing car, the 143. PG-13 heavily involved in the incident earlier on, tragically for them. They started very strong in a podium position, now fighting to work their way back up through that field. SimHQ2 showing a good performance today, on par with what they had last time out at Daytona. A strong run. Brian Van Buxham doing a great job behind the wheel of that car today. And Can-Am Express, one of the many Can-Am cars in this series, Brian Slabisky doing a great job in that BMW, pushing it as hard as he possibly can here, trying to gain as much as they can. Of course, it's been a very tumultuous race for the GTE field, so a lot is on the line and a lot to be taken advantage of. Triple R Racing sitting a bit further back in this thing. They started low, but they've gained a spot so far overall, up 1 position so far. Stephanie Bauer doing a great job behind the wheel, or Stefan Bauer doing a fantastic job in this thing today, pushing for all those numbers. Last minute racing, Mark Johnson there behind the wheel of that car, doing a fantastic job out today. Those guys really putting the numbers on for this event, pushing for everything they can get. And then we have Can-Am Canucks coming up behind that. They're down 2 positions from where they started due to today's chaos. But Drew Lidke and the rest of the team pushing as hard as they can to really pull something out of this one. Of course, been a very busy event for all those Canadian teams. A lot of actual Canadian entries overall in this thing. And All Balls Racing with Anthony James there, just behind them. They're down 3 spots, unfortunately, right now for them, which is not what they would have liked to have seen happen in this race. But they are still trooping on, and every point matters. The other Longhorn car, Longhorn Racing there with Mike Tyler, still in behind the wheel of that car. They haven't yet cycled in. Had a pretty kind of mid to rear of the pack race so far. Been very quiet, not really been involved in too much apart from one little tap on LMP2 as they come down Ullman there, getting passed by some of your lead class cars. And towards the rear, NGP Motorsports had a very hectic race. They've been busy racing all day long. Lots of battles they've been involved in, and Michael Ogren doing a great job behind the wheel of that BMW. A little bit further on, MMTR and Steve Rivard. They've been pushing as hard as they can. Last car really overall in the GTE class, as Team Leonard Burke did not start today, but they're doing the best they can. A couple of laps down here from the rest of the field after a couple of incidents, especially a big hit in that initial accident, so we've had a lot to repair on that car. That is our Penguin RC race report, Taylor.
It certainly is. And of course, don't forget to visit them at penguinrc.com to get all the most high quality and affordable simulation products needed for your sim racing experience. 1 hour and 24 minutes to go. 36 laps have been completed for the field of cars out here on the track today. Of course, 34 cars have started this race, and we still have 34 cars out on the race circuit. David Williams still your race leader in LMP2. No changes there whatsoever. He has in fact pulled his race lead to about 18.4 seconds over CMS Pro Summit team of Jordan Johnson right now. Just an absolute dominant performance, Rachel. And same thing with the Unified Performance Racing of Justin Hess, who has pulled out in the GTE class over Liam Radzitis.
They really have. They've been pushing this one to really open things up in this, and it's been a very busy race for them overall so far. As Simich Q3, and I believe just behind Kamikaze, I'm beginning to think that might actually be, it's not PG-13. I thought it was for a second there, but it in fact is not. I think that's a lap down car that was just behind Kamikaze there, so I might have just had a brain fart moment, but it's a big gap for Unified right now. They've had a great run. Justin Hess showing how strong he was last time, proving exactly the same today.
Certainly is. And for those of you who are fans of the PG-13 racing, just got word from driver Cameron Bidwell. They got their fast repair done. Watch out, field. They're coming through the field, and they're working on that right now as we watch the PG-13 racing of Alex LaRose and that Corvette make the pass to the inside of David Anderson and that Longhorn Racing Lone Star Ferrari as they work their way down the front straightaway heading into turn number 1.
Absolutely are, and turn number 1 being one of the strongest corners here, but it's the easiest one to make a mistake on. Great opportunity for a crossover with that big wide entry and a very tight exit to the corner there, Taylor. But because it offers so many avenues into the corner, it's a lot like Suzuka turn 1, that you will get lots of cars filtering in and not much room for them to exit. So you've got to be really, really careful here at Sebring, especially with it being so flat. That's a huge factor because you don't get a lot of grip offline.
Certainly is. Of course, here in Florida, we don't have very major elevation changes here. Of course, not a major hill. I mean, if you find a hill in Florida, please let me know, because pretty much we go underwater here if anything major were to happen with the sea levels in Florida, as we watch on and see a couple of cars. Speaking of Hard Promise Racing, as the fans are asking, we give them to you. Javier Perez Torres, currently 1 lap down in that number 17, sits in the 14th position as you ride on board with him heading down the front straightaway into turn number 1. And turn 1 and turn 17, probably some of the most bumpiest corners, as you see how much of the bumps he's having to travel over and trying to keep that thing on the straight and narrow. And of course, in the plaid colors in that number 17, we were talking about how that's probably one of the more interesting paint schemes we've seen out there, but still out there trying to put on a good performance.
Absolutely is, of course, and it's been a very tumultuous race overall, Taylor. I think this has been one of our biggest real pitches in the series to see how things go when things can go wrong. But it's always going to be a factor when it comes to any kind of league racing. You'll have those good events, you'll have those more difficult events, I think is the best way to really put it here. And honestly, from what I've seen, CMS has proved to be one of those fantastic leagues where we have a very high standard, even when mistakes happen. And speaking of finding great leagues, Grid Finder is probably going to be the place for you to go and find those for yourself. Grid Finder is your go-to resource for sim racing leagues, and it's currently home to over 500 leagues across all gaming platforms, covering 10 different sims. Need a commentator or a broadcaster for your races? Search Grid Finder. Need a livery designer for your next car? Gridfinder! And Gridfinder has teamed up, of course, with the sim racing community to create a sim racing calendar in support of the men's health charity CALM. 100% of the profits going to CALM, which is, of course, the campaign against living miserably. In fact, if you didn't know, suicide is the leading cause of adult male death, more than anything else. And it's something that's unfortunately very underlooked in society. CALM aim to change that. So, of course, Gridfinder pairing up with a lot of the racing leagues to support CALM. Of course, you can visit grid-finder.com and purchase a calendar to keep track of all your races and support a great charity, and use many of Gridfinder's awesome other features. That is Gridfinder, grid-finder.com, the home of online sim racing leagues.
You know, I had the privilege of watching some of those Gridfinder races, and you know, Rachel, some of the types of cars series that they have for that Gridfinders is phenomenal. Of course, you have your GT3 leagues, which is quite popular, possibly one of the most popular classes of sport racing on the iRacing service. But also, they actually brought back the old original Daytona prototypes that we used to see back in the early 2000s of iRacing, as well as in the Grand Am racing. And I gotta say, those races are phenomenal, as we now see one of the CMS Pro drivers come down pit road. That was Jordan Johnson. And looks like we're going to have Chris Schellemer be in the car now, so a driver change for one of our top competitors.
Certainly is, and that will make a big difference for us with how this one flows forwards, of course. We'll have to change how that goes. Of course, CMS Pro Summit on pit road, Christopher Schellemer getting behind the wheel of that machine as they go through their pit cycle. It'll be the second stop for them.
Watching on, seeing as we also have tire changes happening for the CMS Pro Summit team as they continue to get their cars' needed repairs and requirements completed, as they are now off of pit road to rejoin the race surface. They're now going to be in the 9th position as Christopher Scheimeller will come out onto the racetrack and lead the way through, as he is one of the first drivers inside the top 5 to do a driver change, as we'll keep an eye and see what the rest of the field will decide to do later on.
We absolutely certainly will. I just want to take a second actually to look at the CMS Pro Summit car, because that is a gorgeous design. I absolutely love that machine. In fact, you know what? We're going to take an opportunity here to look at some of the different liveries, I think, on the cars, because this league has got some gorgeous cars from some amazing designers, and the teams have done some fantastic jobs with these. But that is a gorgeous machine. The beautiful burnished greens and blues and the silver geometric design on that vehicle is absolutely stunning. Love that one myself. Also, Revo Satellite Racing. Not very satellite-y, but it almost looks like a fingerprint. I love how that car looks. The design is absolutely gorgeous. It's very subtle actually from most angles. You think it just looks blue, but there's a almost fingerprint design over the entire surface of the vehicle. And it looks absolutely gorgeous. Now, other ones that are personally my favorites, of course, in the Pro Series, or the LMP2. We've got TNT Gold. TNT's livery is clean. It's very them. It's always been a very similar style of colors they've used as a team, but it has a new twist to it that looks really, really hot. One of the simplest designs overall, I think, in the LMP2 class is Team Cosmos, which is very clean, but I really like how it looks overall. It's a very sharp design. Very simplistic, but gets the message across, keeps the car looking very, very easy to recognize who the actual sponsors are. Of course, center lock designs there. And CSR. Very, very, very simple but elegant design. And we can't forget my other favorite one, Craft Dinner Racing. I mean, they put macaroni on a car. That's an instant win in my book. And the chrome Canadian flag, or Canadian maple leaf, I should say, on the engine cover looks great, but it's covered in mac and cheese. You can't go wrong with that. Right, Taylor?
Well, when your car's team name is Craft Dinner Racing, I would be very disappointed if you did not put mac and cheese on your car. That would be the most uncool design and team name ever for a race car if you did not put mac and cheese. One car I do got to throw in, of course, being a fan of, you know, purple and that kind of color, the Pneumatic Motorsports team, both the blue and the purple, their design of how they just have that chrome black and then their selected color for their team is phenomenally well placed, I would think. Jason Lundy in the blue car right now, as you see it pass by, as well as, of course, Jimmy Hume in the purple. He's now coming through turn number 2 right now. Those two, I love how those teams work together to make sure that they have the same liveries to a degree, but just add a little bit of a difference to tell each other apart.
Let's have a quick look at our GTE field. The first one I'm going to highlight here is Bosphorus Motorsport Blue. That car is a very kind of biased in terms of its color combinations. A very asymmetric design. I do like asymmetry when it comes to artwork on vehicles between the kind of buff silver and the matte blue with the lime green there in the middle. It's a great color combination that really has a good pop to it. It really kind of stands out as a gorgeous, gorgeous design with well-balanced sponsor decals. As someone who's done a lot of actual car artwork in iRacing in the past, I love how this thing looks. My only criticism is the weird tick on the roof and how a couple of little parts of it aren't quite lined up. It kind of bugs me slightly as an artist, but
Easy.
I mean, looking at the logo on the side of the car, it's almost like it's actually meant to tick down there. So, actually, yeah, looks great. Other vehicles that I think look phenomenal in that field, of course, there's the heinous combination of the Renault Corvette.
I'm still triggered by
Renault
that.
Alpine Racing. It triggers me extensively. But you know what? They're French. They want to support France, and there's no French car in the series. It's well done, actually. Looks very good at the moment. PG-13 have a great car. Longhorn Racing and Longhorn Racing Lone Star are the two that confuse me the most. At a distance, I want to think they're Realtree camo, especially as their team's called Longhorn. But if you look closely, it's a gorgeous Art Deco design with chrome logos for the team and their sponsor decals. It looks amazing. It's beautiful up close. But for some reason, from a distance, I just want to think it's Realtree camo.
I get a more of a reptile skin color on those Ferraris as well. If you look real close, like it almost looks like a bit of rattlesnake scales, which of course, these teams being from the Lone Star state of Texas, it's a perfect match for those Ferraris as they continue on their way. A couple of things though I wanted to quickly point out, Rachel. Did you know there's only 2 cars in the entire race who has not had a single incident since the drop of the green flag? The LMP2 Revo Racing number 67 and the Pneumatic Motorsports Blue have yet to have a single incident. That means no off tracks, no spins, no contacts with any other cars or any of the pit barriers or tire barriers. And that's phenomenal work, especially with how chaotic it has been for opening stints here for these drivers.
It really is, and it's been a great run for them to do that so far. It's tricky because Sebring's a track where it's easy to get an off track or any kind of minor incident point. So, with how busy this race and chaotic this race has been, that's an impressive achievement. Although, speaking of which, we're being told the best in GTE is the team of Longhorn Lone Star with CMS owner David Anderson at the wheel. Oh, okay. So we've got some bias going on here from Doug Atkinson. That's a thing apparently. It's David Anderson, yeah.
It is David Anderson, yeah, so one of the boss men coming out.
Yeah, the boss man behind the wheel. Let's see what he can do.
Well, currently right now he sits in the 8th position in class, or 24th overall right now. He's currently trying to make up ground on the number 34 SimHQ Motorsports 2. That's driven by Brian Van Buscombe right now in that number 34, trying to see if he can catch up. Of course, he is a lap back as well, so he has a little bit of work to do here today, but pretty sure, given some time, he will work his way up through the field before it is said and done.
I'm pretty sure he will. It's definitely looking they're in a position to do exactly that, and it's a tricky time, of course, but I think they've got an opportunity to do that.
Now, Rachel, I cannot remember, but wasn't there a little bit of a gentleman bet between the two owners of CMS as well as, I believe, the SimHQ teams?
There is indeed, yes.
There is.
They weren't sure what the objective should be of that, but I believe it was my very self last week that suggested that the loser must ride a mechanical bull on film.
I think so. I think
it seemed appropriate.
It certainly did. So we'll have to keep an eye and see how those two are, because they're right there nose to tail, SimHQ and Longhorn Racing running 7th and 8th.
How very convenient regarding that bet that they're next to each other in the running order. It's almost like it could make all the difference.
It certainly could. So let's see how this goes as we continue on their way here. Later on, of course, it is Ferrari versus Corvette between those two manufacturers. Of course, when it comes to sports car racing, you think Ford versus Ferrari in the 60s. In the 90s, you thought Chevrolet versus Aston Martins. Now, of course, you think Porsche, Ferrari, and Chevrolet and BMW battling it out for race wins at Daytona and Le Mans. Seeing these cars battle it out, and of course, with the possibility of future manufacturers joining in what would be now called the GTD Pro class in IMSA, opens a wide variety of future manufacturers to get involved for these major GTE endurance races.
Yeah, it really will, and that could be a huge factor for them, and it is great with how this really plays out in becoming really as intense as the real thing, because all the strategy is exactly the same. It's something that not many games really manage to represent in terms of comparing it to the real activity. But in sim racing, endurance, I think, is probably the closest, because so much of the racing involves intelligence and driving smart and racing to a strategy. Which, sprint racing, but endurance racing is all about those tactics, and the tactics translate exactly.
It certainly is, as we watch now looks like to be one of the Ferraris. That's the 80, actually on board actually now is the TNT Racing Carvin of Everett Paddock. Ooh, big contact up onto the nose of that. What is that, the number 31 or is that the number 3? That's the Rebellion Racing of Andrew Cheslock, as I'm pretty sure Race Control is going to be having a word with that number 3.
I think he might be, yeah. That was one of those little whoopsie-daisy moments.
Little argy-bargy right there as we watch the replay here. As the carbon car tries to go to the outside, and Cheslock decides to go up a little bit, thinking he's clear, and no, he's not. He's actually going to go over on his side, land back out on 4s, but severe damage possibly to the undercarriage of that number 3.
Yeah, very much so, and I think that's going to be a major factor in how that plays through, but it's getting a bit close at this stage of the race. We're getting some tiredness kicking in, I think.
Thinking so, as people's tempers may start to flare a little bit, people trying to keep their cool. We still are just shy of an hour left to go here today at Sebring, as you ride on board with George Dean and the Wildfire Racing Dragon, the green and purple LMP2 car working by one of the SimHQ Corvettes down the Ullman Strait, heading into Sunset Bend. And I gotta say, I love these camera angles by Dougie Beard with you on board. You can actually see the bumps happening for Dean as he works his way through these bumps out of corner exit, heading down the front straightaway. Even the front straightaway is bumpy. That's just how difficult you have to be on the edge here at Sebring, Rachel.
Oh, absolutely. Sebring is on the edge the entire way around. The only place you can really relax is Ullman and the front straight, because everything else, you're turning, you're handling bumps, off-camber corners, the curbs. The track becomes incredibly temperamental to the driver, and you've got to give it your full focus the whole time.
Certainly is, as you're on board with our GTE race leader, Justin Hess, in that United Performance Racing Ferrari, as he is currently holds on to his class lead by looking at timing and scoring right now by about 32 seconds. A phenomenal performance by Justin Hess and Kurt Poulter, who, for those of you who are fans of Podium Broadcasters and Bearded Sim Racing Productions, with the BMW's Car Club of America sim racing series that happened a while back, he'll be getting behind the wheel of this Ferrari a little later on as he works down the Ullman Straight. A couple of LMP2s closing in on the back bumper of him as they work through Sunset Bend. Keep an eye on him to see how he's going to be able to finish out this race.
Yeah, so much more to do from this, and the GTE class are going to be very much the real bouncer with this in terms of how it all plays out. It's always been that way. They are the critical class because they're something to race around for the LMP2s and for the GTE cars with the lower downforce. Their race is just so much more visceral and dependent on how they can handle this track.
Now, one of the things that these drivers need to realize when it comes to racing in multi-class is these lap traffics cars or GTE cars that you see on the track for the LMP2s can be used to an advantage to a degree if you play your cards right. In sports and short track racing in the world of NASCAR, we utilize lap cars as a pick in order to get around our competitors. In sports car racing, they utilize the same thing here, but mostly when it comes to slower traffic or other classes in the sports car series that they are competing in order to help work their way around their competitors or even hold off competitors, depending on which part of the track you're on.
Well, it's not just that, it's multi-class racing. The different classes are a core component of the racing itself, because the difference between a fast driver and a great endurance driver that can win races is their ability to work traffic, because if you can't work traffic, you simply will not be good enough in endurance racing. You have to be able to time when you pass somebody, you have to be able to time when you get to them to get past. Passing them at unfortunate times can either force a mistake from the GTE car or the slower car, leading to a crash, or it can cost you time. So you've got to learn how to work that traffic. You'll see people like Revo Satellite Racing, that team have phenomenal traffic handling. It's why they're at the front. Not just fast cars, they are fast racers.
Smart racing, as many people would say, as we ride on board with a driver change that has happened recently. Paul Darling has now gotten behind the wheel of that Revo Satellite Racing, and he is going to be out there flying here in his LMP2 Dallara. Currently, right now, his best lap time is a 147.044. And looking through the field right now, that's the fastest lap of the race as he comes down through the Ullman Straight, heading into Sunset Bend. And that's one of the things that this team has done. When they have that lead, they don't continue to try to build it by rushing through traffic. They take their time, make sure they wait to the opportune time in order to make the pass. They don't rush through it. They don't make bold moves right away. They just run their race the track and the cars around them, not focus on being the fastest car out there.
It's a strategy I always had in the GT racing was when I'm out front, I'm not racing the track, I'm not racing the best time. I'm trying to race the bumper of the car behind me. It's about setting a distance, it's about maintaining a gap. Now, I remember I took a race from Sonoma, I think it was, in California. I raced a 1 second gap the entire race. I just kept that time to P2 at a second because I was going slower than I had to. I could have gone faster, but I would have burned my tires up. Now, I raced that 1 second gap and maintained it, which meant that I was always a second ahead of them. No matter how fast they drove, I was a second faster. But I had something left in the tank, which meant I had tires left. Which meant towards the end of the race, that gap just grew without me trying. Because I'd maintained my car better overall, because I wasn't giving it everything. I'd left something in the tank, which meant the car thanked me for it. And that's something that you should really be thinking about as a leader in an endurance race is something can go wrong down the line. You want to keep as much in the bank as possibly you can, because everything you could possibly need, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Certainly is true there, Rachel, as we watch and see these drivers who are just trying to take care of their equipment so that way when it counts, like you said, towards the end of the race, they have a chance for a good finish or possibly even win today's race. Right now, as you're on board with Wayne Hutchinson in the Hard Promise Racing LMP2 car, and I gotta say, instead of hard promises, I would say it's hard luck for this team right now. They've had a couple of major issues in the early stages, but are trying to continue to fight on in the 14th position, trying to see if they can catch up to the WZ Racing as that goes off track, as we just see that pass for position. And I think another driver who gets the hard luck award is Chip Witt in the WWZ Red LMP2.
Yeah, they've not had the best of races today so far, unfortunately. Started at the back of that group, but they've gained a couple of spots due to incidents for other teams. Not been the most positive day out for them, but they've persevered all race long and they've really tried. It's just not been really their day overall. But they have put a wonderful effort in. Both Chip and Rob have really pushed this car. So it's definitely hats off to them for really persevering with this amazing field of drivers, because being towards the back end of the pack in the CMS series means you are still very, very fast.
Certainly is, as the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series is one of the top iRacing Endurance Series on the service, where you see some very high-quality teams, top fast drivers in all classes here. Of course, 2 classes here today, LMP2 and GTE, but still some very high-quality drivers as we watch our race leader, Paul Darling, in the Revo Satellite Racing continue on his way through out of the Lamar Curve, heading down the Ullman Straight. and just pretty much taking his time, biding his time, waiting for the opportune time to make a pass, working through the field right now. As we also see right in front of him our GTE race leader, Justin Hess, in his Ferrari. He's another driver who's just been taking his time, minding his P's and Q's. And with that, he has I would have to say, over a minute lead through his second place driver of Liam Razitas.
Okay, yeah, no, he's been really pushing this thing. Razika's still in the car for Kamikaze, so he'll have to probably swap out at the next stop for his fair time in the vehicle with the rest of his teammates. But they've been in second place, so a lot of other cars have swapped out. I know that Unified Performance Racing haven't yet either. Justin Hess still behind the wheel there. CMHQ3 is still Paul Hale. So we'll see how those guys can push this one through, but we've seen a lot of changes in the LMP2 class, but not GTE yet.
Well, one driver, I think, has made his way up through the field. That's the PG-13 Racing Corvette. Alex LaRose has come down, got some repairs done, and he's now up to P6. And about 4 seconds back from the 5th position of Jack Chrissy in their own Alpine Racing Corvette. So that could be a good battle right there if given the time a little later on here. But we still also have pit stops to worry about for the rest of the GTE field. That should be happening here in the next 10-15 minutes, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. We're looking at about that for the LMP2 pit stops, so probably 10 minutes later for our GTE stop in this window. But we've got about an hour, just under an hour left now, 55 minutes left on the clock in round 2 here at Sebring before we get into position to really look at how this one's going to play out. As we have a car off the track. I think it was WWZ Red had a single car spin out after turn 2 there. I'm just going to look at what happened, and yeah, they just lost the back end on their own and stood onto the grass, but they managed to not hit anything, so that's a good bonus.
Yeah, that's always a good bonus when you don't able to hit anything. Of course, Chip Witt driving some of the PCA colors on his LMP2 Dallara, another Porsche Club of America Series driver who we could possibly be seeing later on this year competing, as he continues on his way in the 15th position overall and in Class 2 laps down from race leader Paul Darwin.
Yeah, it's going to change things quite significantly, I think, in that terms, but it's going to be tricky to see where it plays through. But Darling also navigating traffic here, passing Lone Star. Oh, Longhorn, sorry, back there. No, it was Longhorn, Lone Star. I was right the first time. And I think that's SimHQ just ahead of them right now as Revo Satellite and Darling try and find their way through. Darling now in that car, of course, as a swap from his teammate. Those guys with David Williams initially in that car, so they're on their second driver now, so we'll see how this one does go for them.
You know, we have to give a shout out to...
I was just going to say, we can actually tell, if we look on our driver standings page, what the fair share of actual driver changes is. We can actually see whether they're good yet or not.
Yes, we can. But one of the things I wanted to point out, you know, Rachel being a female in motorsports and in sim racing, you know, we start to see that happening more and more throughout the service. And in fact, one female is actually out there running inside the top 10. Morgan Gillespie is currently out on track in that number 12 SimHQ Motorsports LMP2, doing a great job as she's working her way up. She's currently the second car 1 lap down behind the Craft Dinner Racing Tommy Lee Hogan, try to put her 1 lap, the first car 1 lap down, if given the opportunity to get that lead lap back.
Yeah, just like real life, there's not a ton of females in sim racing, nor in motor racing, unfortunately. It's great to see more, absolutely great to see more, especially when they're doing well and they're competing equally. And I think sim racing's a perfect field for that, really, because there's no difference. Everyone has hands, everyone has feet, everyone has eyes. You're exactly equal in that regard. There's no difference. No one can pull a physical card out there. Although, you know, I have taken my share of women driver comments and, you know, where do you keep your lipstick in that car routines. But unfortunately, things are getting better, honestly. And there's definitely a lot of leagues which are a much nicer environment for people to be in. And you tend to see a lot more female drivers in the leagues. And I'm really excited to see a couple of female drivers in the CMS series. It really shows a good kind of drive towards equality between teams, and whether it's, you know, race, whether it's, you know, gender, all those things. It's a really welcoming environment.
Ooh, trouble right behind her, though. There's the PG-13 Racing and the Brake Fade Racing team get together a little bit right there. They're able to keep it on the straight and narrow, but continue on. as those two will go ahead and do battle once again here at Sebring. But we have to go take a look at the battle for second place here in a few moments as you take a look at the replay, as we will see Cameron Bidwell get in contact with Brian Blanchette off of the pit exit. There's the contact, and almost could have sent Bidwell into one of the Arco barriers there, but was able to continue on his way there, Rachel.
Yeah, tricky location for that to happen, and they got out lucky just from that. It could have been much, much, much worse. But hey, that's motor racing. Sometimes it goes your way, sometimes you just escape with the skin of your teeth.
Certainly does, as we now watch the battle for second place between the Imperial Motorsports Shake and CMS Pro Summit team. Lee Peterson, Christopher Scheimeller, who will do battle for that second spot. 1.5 seconds is the gap. This is the best battle in LMP2 right now, as those two are now heading down, I believe, the Ullman Straight, and we'll see, utilizing the slipstream, Christopher Pies tries to duck to the inside of one of the Corvette GTE cars. That is Warren McGarry in the MMTR Chevrolet Corvette, as they work through Sunset Bend. Scheimeller tries to go the outside way, the long way around, almost makes contact, but will get around him and try to keep up with Christopher Pies.
Yeah, he's doing what he can here for that, but it's a very tricky time on track to be putting yourself in those sort of positions here. It's getting very busy. We've actually seen how to driver swap for Kamikaze. Hubert Masek in that car now, as a very hectic front stretch here for the LMP2 cars. Pneumatic purple and blue all over each other in a big knot of cars, both fields in this one, as the race really hotting up in this final hour.
Certainly is. And speaking of race, how about some racer wear? Racerware was started to help out the sim racing DIY community with CNC services. And with multiple machines at our disposal, we can offer up competitive pricing with a personal touch. The owners personally make all pieces and make sure they are shipped with the best quality. Contact them for a personalized quote and discuss your best option at racerware.com.
Yeah, that's one of those things that's a really necessary service, I think, in sim racing, Taylor, is sometimes you've got this piece of kit you want to mount in a certain way, and you're like, oh god, how do I do this? And you end up hodgepodging something together from a hardware store, and it creaks, it groans, it moves, and it twists, and it's never quite right. But Racerware, they can make it for you properly, like it was a piece made in a factory, exactly something bought off a shelf for a specific job. Like, I race on a race. I used to race on this desk, but I have a curved L-shaped desk with a car spun out there. That's the Kamikaze machine, just had a solo spin there, but I have an L-shaped desk, right? So the middle part's curved, where my main monitor is. That's where my wheel goes and where my flight yoke goes now. I do a lot of flight simming, which makes it very difficult to mount things to that area. So I had to make myself a bracket for my shifter under the side of the desk there, mounted to the underside of it. And that's exactly the sort of thing that Racerware could help you with. They could make you the things you need to mount to whatever situation you find yourself in, because when you are comfortable with your racing setup or your gaming setup in general, you will perform better. So that's a wonderful, amazing service they offer, because that can get you exactly what you need, no compromise.
Certainly is, but someone who decided to possibly have a little bit of compromise is that battle for second place, as the CMS Pro Summit team was able to get around. Lee Peterson has some trouble right there for one of the cars. That looks like to be one of the Longhorn Racing Ferraris. And I think Justin Hess also involved in that incident with the Unified Performance. Let's get a quick look at that replay if we can. Both of them, I think, might have went off track a little bit.
Tiny little bit, yeah, I think just a bit, but not a huge amount.
Close call indeed for Justin Hess in that Unified Performance Racing Ferrari, but still able to keep it on the straight and narrow and continue on his way. But that battle for second still going to rage on between the LMP2s of Christopher Scheimeller and Leif Peterson now, as Peterson's trying to close back in. About 0.6 of a second separate the two drivers. Little lap traffic in front of them, but this is still a great battle for position, and with less than an hour to go, this is going to get even more exciting.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's an exact phase we want to see this sort of race happening in, is exactly where it can provide some really entertaining, energetic racing, and we're seeing that from these guys. Real opportunity to make something truly different with this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they do it.
Certainly is. If they work down the Ullman Straight right now, we'll see if that will come into play. CMS will get around one of the lap traffic cars. I believe that's the NGP Motorsports BMW of Michael Organ. As we see continue on here
car 6 had an incident.
Yep, looks like car number 6 did have an incident. That's Hubert Messiah, the kamikaze. We just talked about them, had a self spin a little earlier on. He's still out on track racing, but back in 11th position.
Oh, no. Sorry, Taylor, they had a second incident. They were racing there with, I believe that would be the number 33 car they were running with, and they had a bit of a touch there coming up towards Cunningham, I think it was, where they came across, no, it was the kink, sorry, for 9. They kinked and they hit them and they spun out them and then turned sideways across the grass. So their fault moved to across the track where they weren't clear, but, well, they ended up backwards and off the grass, so they kind of paid a penalty themselves.
Tough break for them indeed, as they are now starting to fall back through the field right now. They're sitting 10th overall in class and 25th throughout the entire field compared to when they were running 2nd in the early parts of the race. So a tough break for Team Kamikaze in that number 6 BMW. As you see the replay, that looks like one of the brake fade cars involved in that incident as well.
Yeah, absolutely does. Unfortunate for them, but these are the breaks of racing.
Certainly is. Big issue for the 82 TNT Carbon and the 33 MTR Corvette, and major issues for that as the Carbon of Scott McIntyre just, I would have to say, just rams the back bumper of the 88 or the 33 of Warren McGarry.
I think the 33 braked way too soon there.
I think so.
He braked super early and unexpected on the racing line, and I think he was going to try and let the LMP2 in down the inside line, and he didn't realize it. So big donk there.
Big issue for one of the LMP2 competitors currently in 11th, and that TNT Racing, the Carbon edition of the team, has had a tough break all race long. Still having trouble negotiating through lap traffic, getting by one of the Kamikaze BMWs as they come out of Lamar Curve down the Ullman Straight. This could be a little bit easier, I would hope, for the TNT Racing Carbon of Scott McIntyre, as he'll go to the inside of these BMWs here before they get to Sunset Bend. But I gotta say, they are just struggling right now after multiple incidents throughout the race today.
Yeah, they really are. So it's difficult. A very difficult situation to find yourself in, where you're just getting into these incidents over and over again. And when you've had a couple, it sets you off the format, really, and you end up just having more and more moments.
Well, a little bit better, though, for the sister car of the TNT Racing, the TNT Racing Gold. Currently sits in the 5th position, driven by Fabio Berchtold, who's currently trying to run down, looks like one of the Pneumatic Motorsports purple machineries. Of course, he's about 29 seconds back from Robert Tarbox Jr., currently right now in that number 14 as they continue on here. 56 laps completed, 48 minutes to go as you're on board with Team Brake Fade BMW of Brian Blanchette, as they continue through on the field right now. And currently they're battling with Mark Johnson in Last Minute Racing, as those two will do battle for the 8th position in class. As we continue to watch the racing here today at Sebring International Raceway, we are going to take a quick time to enjoy the sights and sounds of Sebring. You're watching the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series live on the CMS Racing Channel. And we, of course, enjoy the sights and sounds here at Sebring, and it's just wonderful to hear the symphony of different engine sounds throughout the field here. Of course, you are watching event number 2 of the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series live from Sebring International Raceway. LMP2s and GTE cars out for a 150-minute endurance race here for event number 2. And Rachel, that's one of the more wonderful, and as you brought up earlier, spiritual things when it comes to sports car endurance racing. You know, with other forms of motorsports, you kind of hear really one different type, one of the same engine notes throughout the entire race. Here, you get a symphony of different engine sounds, revs, makes, models. I mean, it's just a wonderful sound to listen to.
It really is. There's so much variety, of course, in motorsports racing, but endurance racing gives you a whole different entire feeling, a whole different kind of existence when it comes to this kind of racing. It just feels so much more alive, and I really think it presents a really gorgeous experience for the viewer, for the drivers themselves, for the teams, and being at those places in real life. It's just a wow kind of experience. You just don't have anything else like it.
One of my favorite things to do when I go to the Rolex 24 is, after a certain period of time, just close your eyes and just guess which manufacturer is zooming by you as you listen to the sounds, as we just saw and listened to a few moments ago, and trying to pick out which car is which. Of course, for the GTE cars, it's a little bit easier for the most part, but of course, in recent years with the new C8 Corvette, it's a little bit difficult sometimes to tell them apart from the rest of the field, since they are now that mid-engine Corvette compared to the thunderous V8s that we used to hear back in previous models, such as the C7 and C6.
Oh, absolutely, and I miss the C7 and the C6. They were gorgeous cars, but hey, it's it's definitely different sound, but it's still an absolute blast hearing those things.
It certainly is. Of course, the C8 Corvette is a Rolex 24 winner this year in the 2021 Rolex 24 at Daytona, as they are trying to defend their championship. And a driver who's trying to defend his position right now in a Corvette is the PG-13 Racing car of Cameron Bidwell, holding off the hard-charging BMW of Mark Johnson in the last-minute racing team as they come through the back half of the course, heading up to, I believe, turn 15 and 16 right now, as they work through the winds and twists and turns of the S's before they come to Lamar Corner down the Ullman Straight. And if Johnson can get a good run, he can maybe try to slingshot past Bidwell for that position of 7th place as they rocket down the Ullman Straight, heading over into Sunset Bend.
Yeah, they absolutely are, and of course, it really expands the feeling of this thing. It really shows just how close this race is coming now. 45 minutes to go, and we're absolutely on this thing when it comes to the race in general. It's becoming an absolute tooth and nail fight here for these guys.
Certainly is, as we see Johnson looks to the inside as they go underneath the banner, heading into turn 1. Bidwell will give way this time around, as now Mark Johnson in his BMW takes over that 7th position as Chip Witt in the WWZ Red Dallara watches on from behind.
GTE lead on pit road there. Kurt Poulter in the car now for Unified Performance Racing for the first time today. Getting that thing down off the jacks and away on pit road here. Good stop for them. As Leonard Burke actually was just in the session, so he's around. He's just not racing. Interesting. But either way, things going on so far. He gets back out on the track itself here. Get themselves moving. As that LMP2 race up ahead is absolutely all over it. Rebellion there. Oh, TNT have just been off track themselves. They had it off before Le Mans. In fact, they spun off, self-spin, coming to Le Mans. They went wide and then just locked up and spun out to the left into open space. They rejoined, but keep around Rebellion. This thing is all over the place.
Yeah, currently Andrew Cheslock is behind the wheel of that number 3 Rebellion Racing LMP2 Dallara, as you ride on board right now with Cameron Bidwell in the PG-13 Racing Corvette. But Rebellion Racing, definitely one of the Tough Break Award drivers this season. Having a tough race, last race at Daytona, and of course, a very horrendous start at the beginning here today at Sebring, and I'm pretty sure they're looking forward to seeing how well they can do in the European stage next round on March 21st, when we head to a little bit more of a wider track compared to Sebring Le Mans.
This would be a whole different ball game. That's a hybrid between Sebring really and Daytona. You've got a very wide, well-managed track, but it has some really twisty old sections there that can really upset you. But with some of the big high-speed straights, you'll see 2-3 passes perhaps on some of the lengths. They're almost as long as some of the straights at the Nürburgring, the Nordschleife. So dotting the whole of the big long stretch towards the end. I mean, we'll see some of those at Le Mans. We'll see some 2-pass straights.
Certainly is. Certainly is, as we'll keep an eye. Of course, that'll be on March 21st. You can catch the action once again on Sunday, March 21st at 2 p.m. when we bring you the coverage from Le Mans. Myself, Rachel Whiteford, and Ryan Bauer going to give you the coverage, sights, sounds, and all the storylines. So make sure to tune in then. But we still have great racing left to go here as we are closing in on 38 minutes. So this is now considered now a sprint race to the finish here. And Rachel, a lot's going to be on the line.
Absolutely is. And we're in that final segment here where people have done those final stops. We're looking at really putting in those good times here to get yourself positioning, because where you finish out at the end of this cycle is the end of the race here. So this is important. So far, Revo Satellite have not really been challenged in this race. The gap to CMS Pro Summit team is, as they come off pit road themselves, Christopher Chalmier behind the wheel of that car. 46-second gap. There's been a phenomenal run by Revo Satellite again. Unified Performance as well, doing a fantastic job. They've managed their race well. Kurt Poulter now behind the wheel of that car, and they're going to be getting their time in here to really push this gap and open it up to make it work. Now, we need to see another 9 laps here from Poulter for the fair share to count. Kamikaze need 2 more for their fair share to count. In fact, all the fair share change swaps that need to kind of still be meeting requirements should be made. They will be made should the car stay, of course, on track for every car, but all those are in our GTE field. Everybody pretty much in the LMP2 field are fine at the moment in that regard, other than TNT Carbon, who's 1 lap off making that number. That is called Scott McIntyre. But there is so much left to do for these guys, so much left to gain, and it's going to be huge, but I think our 2 class leaders are looking very strong.
Certainly so. And for those of you who are wondering, well, what's the shared time? Well, in sports car and endurance racing, drivers have a minimum drive time requirement that they must complete. And the same thing applies in iRacing, but the thing is they go by laps. So the number of laps that a team of drivers competes in will make them actually qualify or actually able to make it official in their finishing order. If they do not complete it, let's say a driver does not complete all the at least minimum requirement of the laps, that car would be disqualified and, of course, move to the end of the field, unfortunately. So they have to make sure they hit every single mark and get the minimum required laps in order to be officially counted in their finishing position here today. So it's very important, Rachel, for these drivers to get in at the absolute right time in order for them to be counted as the official finishing.
Yeah, they do, and that's a huge factor to take into account here. You've got to make sure that has been covered so that you're in a position to really kind of add that to your overall total. Otherwise, it's an easy thing to overlook, and we've seen some teams fall foul of it in the past.
Certainly have. We even seen it in professional racing. I can remember back in the, I believe, 2014, 2015, Rolex 24 with Wayne Taylor Racing. They were disqualified because they did not meet the minimum drive time requirements between the 2 Taylor brothers.
Yeah, that could be a huge mistake. You may not notice it's just not quite been right, but it could be a difference of a lap. It makes a difference.
It certainly does right now as we watch on some of the cars right now. That's one of the PG-13 Racing Corvettes of Cameron Bidwell trying to get back to the back bumper of Last Minute Racing's BMW of Mark Johnson. This is one of the closer battles out on the track. Nothing has changed up towards the front of the field in LMP2 nor in GTE. As we watch and see, it's still Paul Darling in the Revo Satellite Racing LMP2, and now Kurt Poulter, as we just brought out earlier on, in the Unified Performance Racing Ferrari, leading here with about 34 minutes to go as the P2 battle for GTE between Paul Hale and Brian Van Buscombe are battling the 2 sister cars. SimHQ Motorsports having a little bit of a battle with the 2 Corvettes.
Yeah, they really are. The Corvettes are really pushing it at the moment. It's not the place you'd like to find yourself in at this time of the race, but it certainly works out. Also, notice that SimHQ 3 and 2 are in 2nd and 3rd right now, which is great for those guys, of course. But the Corvettes really kicking it at the moment on the track further back there. It's going to make things a little bit more spicy.
Certainly is, as we also watch and see if David Anderson, one of the head owners of the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series, who is currently out on track, sits in 4th position right now. So a great drive for the Lone Star driver as he works his way through the field, trying to see if he can catch up to either one of the SimHQ Motorsports drivers. He's about 38 seconds back from the number 34 Corvette, as we keep an eye on that and see if his progress will be able to improve.
Yeah, we certainly absolutely will. And, folks, to have a quick look at one of our other sponsors today, Complex SimWorks, coming up here for you now. If you're looking for affordable sim racing accessories for your rig, check out Complex SimWorks. They offer 3D printing and custom design services for your sim racing setup at really affordable prices. And Complex SimWorks has many new products in development. Head over to their website at complex-simworks.com. That is complex, without an EX at the end, complex-simworks.com, and see how you can upgrade your rig. Similar service, of course, to Raceware, so more options available. Totally check them out. They've got some really good stuff.
I know for certainly I will be checking them out because I'm actually in the process of upgrading my sim rig here in the future, so looking forward to trying those guys out here momentarily once I get everything lined up and ready to go. But of course, we are now just shy of 30 minutes left to go in the race here today. This is, of course, event number 2 at Sebring International Raceway. And of course, this is the virtual Sebring International Raceway. We are racing on the iRacing service as these drivers are battling it out in LMP2 and GTE classes. And LMP2, of course, is using the Dallara P217. In GTE, you'll find the Chevrolet Corvette C8, the BMW M8, Ferrari 488, and the Porsche 911 RSR.
Yeah, we're not seeing many of the Porsches in this race, actually. The BMWs and the Corvettes have been the real strong cars, and a couple of Ferraris, but we've not really seen any of the Porsches, actually.
I think at least 2 Porsches are in the field here today, I believe. The Bofors Motorsports cars, I believe, are the only Porsche teams.
And there's only one of them today, blue.
Yes, indeed, as he is currently having to battle or get passed by the number 81 LMP2 of the TNT Racing. That's the Gold Edition, who was able to get by him. And of course, when it comes to sports car racing, you can't go wrong with Porsche either, or any of these manufacturers, all of them having a shot at winning in here at Sebring, whether it be in the multiple different classes of racing throughout the decades and the historics of Sebring International Raceway. As we continue on racing here at Sebring, event number 2 for the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series. It's still going to be Paul Darling, your race leader in the LMP2 class, and overall about 58 seconds ahead of Leif Peterson in that Imperial Motorsports P2 car. And looking through the field to see if there's any other good battles, there's a good one right now for the 8th position. Morgan Gillespie and Andrew Cheslock are battling it out right now for that 8th spot. And Morgan has done a great job gaining up inside the top 10. Still not the first car 1 lap down, as currently only 3 cars are shown on the lead lap, as she tries to see if he can catch up to, looks like Drake Burgone, who is 7 seconds ahead of her right now. So a great drive for that SimHQ Motorsports number 1.
Yeah, they've really showed a fantastic race today, and they're up a spot, or down, sorry, a spot overall, but it's still a very strong showing considering how tumultuous the whole event's been. And SimHQ overall having a very, very strong outing today. Specifically the GTE class, where they're looking at double podiums here. But SimHQ won, of course, putting up a strong fight and staying in their place really throughout this whole thing with a very, very strong LMP2 field.
Certainly so. And with that, as we are closing in on the final minutes, it's time to give you the final Penguin RC race report. Of course, they have the high-quality, affordable simulation products for all sim racers. Visit them today at penguinrc.com. Revo Satellite Racing just left their pit box. They are currently your race leader right now. Paul Darling behind the wheel. Him and David Williams have had a dominating performance since the drop of the green flag. They will continue on to lead here as they are under 30 minutes to go. As we drop back to second position, he's on pit road right now. That's Leif Peterson in the 913 Imperial Motorsports Shake. Him and Christopher Pies battling it out, holding on in the top three since the drop of the green flag. Very good, consistent run. In third position, Christopher Scheimeller in the CMS Pro Summit team have been holding strong. They've been a top 5 team since the drop of the green flag and continue to show the way in third position. Currently sitting in fourth, the number 4, the Pneumatic Motorsports Blue of James Stacy. It's the only car who has yet to cause an incident or be involved in an incident since the drop of the green flag. A great performance as they are looking to get the Clean Race Award here today. Back in the 5th position, you'll find the sister car, the Pneumatic Motorsports Purple of Robert Tarbox, holding strong in that 5th position. The two teams' cars have been working together since the drop of the green flag and pretty much been lined up nose to tail for the most part. This is the first time they've actually been separated from each other since the green flag has dropped. The first car, one lap down, Fabio Berchtold in the TNT Racing Gold has had a quiet run, has had a couple of close calls, but still holding on in the 6th position, having a great run. Looking forward to closing it out with a top 10 run. Sitting in 7th position, Drake Bergone in the Team Cosmos. Talked about them, how they had one of the cleanest looking paint schemes out there in their Dallara P2 car as they continue on trying to see if they can catch up to the back bumper of Fabio in the number 81 TNT Racing Gold. Andrew Cheslock in the Rebellion Racing, probably one of the hard luck awards drivers, has had a tough race since the drop of the green flag, getting involved in an incident in lap 1, turn number 2, having to face penalties along with other issues throughout the race. They are still able to recover nicely in the 8th position. The Kraft Dinner Racing, Tommy Lee Cogan currently holds on in the 9th spot, one lap down, as he is trying to see if he can get a good finish here, working through lap traffic here today, as he holds on in that Kraft Dinner Racing, making me a little bit hungry right now. Wants to go get some food later on. And 10th, Morgan Gillespie, as she is working her way through the field in the SimHQ Motorsports 1. Currently is the last car that is one lap down throughout the field, having a great run here today. TNT Racing Carbon, you will find Scott McIntyre. He's just now entered pit road. First car 2 laps down. Trying to see if he can get one of those laps back, but has had a tough break since the drop of the green flag. He is looking to recover inside the top 10. Christian Ost in the Penguins RC Complex Simworks 153 P2 car. Also another driver has had a tough break here since the drop of the green flag. He now moves into the 11th position. In 13th position, you'll find DDM Racing's Matthew Overton, who's still out on track waiting to come down pit road. He is trying to see if he can work his way up through the field as he just passes Scott McIntyre for 12th. In the 14th position, we go to Wildfire Racing Dragon of Calvin Salkane, who is out there on track, trying to see if he can catch up in that green and black colors. Looking like the dragon he is, trying to see if he can catch up. He's 3 laps down as right now in 14th. In 15th position, the Hard Promise Racing Wayne Hutchinson in that plaid LMP2 car. Currently 15th, 4 laps down. A tough break for him as well. Seeing if he can try to find a way to get inside the top 15, but it's going to be a tough break. And Robert Cottle is 16th in the class, 5 laps down, as the WWZ Racing Red has had a tough break as well with many incidents throughout the race. Rachel, how is GTE looking?
Well, GTE has been very busy today. Of course, class leaders from start to currently now is Kurt Poulter behind the wheels of the Unified Performance Racing Ferrari. That car has had a phenomenal race, dodging the early carnage. They have led every single lap out of pit cycles for this class and showed a dominant performance really overall. SimHQ number 3 are currently sitting in the 2nd place in class, helmed by Paul Hale. This car's really pushed through here from 25th, well, I should say, starting in 7th in class. They've pushed all the way up right now to 2nd. The 3rd place car being the sister machine, SimHQ 2, with Brian Van Buscom. Of course, these two had a very similar race where they were neck and neck last time out as well. A very strong race. Both team cars having great performances together, so a fantastic team effort there from SimHQ. 4th place is Bosphorus Motorsports Blue, the only Porsche entry here today, with Hassan Khan Ezgin behind the wheel of that machine. A strong performance and basically where they started in this one. So they managed to recover up to that spot from an early kerfuffle, shall we say, on lap 1. PG13 have also made a massive recovery here, putting them in 5th place overall. They are unfortunately a couple of spots down from where they started, 2 in fact, but they've recovered to a top 5. That is huge for PG13 overall. Amazing drive by that team. Cameron Bidwell currently behind the wheel. 6th place is Kamikaze with Hubert Misek behind the wheel. Right now that team has been up as high as 2nd place. A strong run, but down in 6th place currently for them. Team Breakfade are in 7th place at the moment. That has seen Brian Blanchette do a really great job here in this car. They've pushed as hard as they possibly can. They're up 4 spots, so a strong run from Breakfade. Their brakes didn't fade. Renault Alpine Racing started so high. They started 2nd place here today, but after the early incidents on lap 1, they found themselves running from the back here and trying to push forwards. And Hendrik, oh my god, some of these names are fantastic for me. Hendrik, oh my god, we just saw a crash. Literally in front of us as an LMP2 car ran into the back of Hendrik de Zwart's car. Probably confused as to why a Corvette was painted like a Renault. Can-Am Express in 8th place. Brian Sansbelski currently running in that car. They've had a really strong race so far. They're up a spot and they've really performed well despite some of the incidents on track. Longhorn Racing Lone Star with Brett Stevens back behind the wheel of that car again, showing a great performance overall today. They're down 2 overall from where they started in 9th, and they're just pushing through for a great mid-range finish here tonight. Last Minute Racing in 10th behind them, up 4 spots at the moment. Mark Johnson behind the wheel of that car, really taking advantage of other teams' disadvantages today, so a strong showing by Last Minute, making their success in the last minutes. Can-Am Canucks behind them with David Slee behind the wheel. Hasn't been the best for them, but they're maintaining where they started in 13th, so it's a good run overall. All Balls Racing with Jay Daggett. They are currently exactly where they started, also in the 14th spot, so they're holding steady, and it's been a tough race. NGP Motorsports are up 3 at the moment in 15th spot. They are with Michael Ogren behind the wheel, driving as well as they can at the moment. It's been a very tricky race. Of course, lots of traffic has been a big impact for them. Triple R Racing with Stephanie Bauer. Tough race for those guys, but they're really holding this one together. It has been a very long race here at Sebring on a very difficult track. The other Longhorn car with Larry Ford behind the wheel of, weirdly enough, a Ferrari, not a Ford, but we'll forgive him that, is exactly where he started as well, in the 16th spot. Holding steady for now, and it's been a very tough one. Behind them is MMTR, who've been hit by multiple people, It's been a very wrecking ball race for that poor car. Warren McGarry's done his best in this thing, and they're hoping to bring this thing home at least in one piece. Last and final at the moment, 12 laps down, Can-Am Racing had an incident earlier, and Paul Seymour's just trying to get what he can out of this race. Unfortunately for them, running last in the order.
And of course, with that, that concludes today's Penguin RC Race Report. Of course, Penguin RC makes high-quality, affordable simulation products for all sim racers, such as wheels, button box, and of course, they're all crafted to excellence and care. Visit their website at penguinrc.com. 20 minutes to go, Rachel. This is now the time where drivers are starting to get a little more agitated, I would say, with lap traffic, other drivers around them for positions. But this is also not the time to be making any mistakes whatsoever, because it can cost you if you're not careful.
Yeah, it absolutely can. It can really cost you, and it's been a tricky race for a lot of people. I think Can-Am have actually got some serious problems because they're super low on speed there. But this has been a really, really high attrition race. Lots of incidents out on track with this being so bumpy and narrow. There's not been a lot of room for passing, which shouldn't be an issue at Le Mans. But we've seen a lot of exhaustion from these drivers. They have been worn out with this whole thing.
They certainly have. As they continue on here, you now watch our race leader right now, Paul Darling, continue to make the march through the field as he continues to work his lap traffic, passing cars left, right, holding position, being patient, being a little aggressive when trying to work through lap traffic, and doing a phenomenal job of just maintaining that track position that he's had since the drop of the green flag. Same thing with Kurt Poulter in the Unified Performance Racing Ferrari, who's not too far behind him right now. Him, as well as his teammate of Justin Hess have just had a great run as they continue to hold their line, being patient, letting the faster cars go by and passing the slower cars at the opportune time as you watch them go to the back half of the track, heading down the Ullman Straight as they have completed 71 laps, 18 minutes left to go on the clock, Rachel, as they continue on. Nothing really major as far as battles going on. I mean, I see a battle possible brewing between Morgan Gillespie and Andrew Cheslock, but it's about a 4-second gap.
It really is, and that gap's been pretty constant from what I've seen so far. They've been pushing really hard, but it's been one of those tough races where we've seen some of these gaps maintain the whole race long. We've seen some guys pass back and forth. We've seen a lot of changes happening in the pit cycles. That's been our biggest real difference in this thing so far, but as it stands, it's not been terrible.
Certainly has been. As we keep an eye on the field right now, we see Kurt Poulter holding on strong. You now are seeing the PG-13 Racing of Cameron Bidwell trying to work his way through. He's actually, I believe, right behind the 4th place car of Hassan Khan Edskin. I apologize if I did not get the name correctly, but the Bofors Motorsports Blue contact is made between the two cars. That's going to send them around, but able to get back on the track. So a little bit of bumpers banging here today late in the going. Tempers starting to get into the fray of some drivers as the impatience of some are starting to show.
Absolutely is, and impatience is, and more tiredness, I'd say, is the factor here. People are just worn out, I think, at this stage of the race, as a GTE race leader there is coming up behind one of the, I believe it's one of the Sim HQ cars. It is, in fact, coming up now, sandwiched between 2 LMPs. I'd be very nervous as the race leader. This could go horribly wrong in a second.
I think we are going to see Kurt Poulter just be patient, let those 2 LMPs by, and just continue on with his race pace. I mean, when you are someone like Kurt Poulter, who has about a 1-lap advantage over the entire field, looking at timing and scoring right now, you can kind of do certain things that really drivers behind you can't. You can give positions away. You can let drivers by easily.
Look up towards, that'd be the Renault Racing, as we just had a massive sandwich there between them and Longhorn Lone Star, and I believe that was Sim HQ Motorsports 1 there, as we're also going to have, I believe that is Wildfire, trying to find their way through as well in this mess, coming up towards start finish line. Whew, that got hectic for a second heading into sunset.
Meanwhile, Kurt Poulter sitting there with a bag of popcorn watching the show and hoping and praying he can get through it in case an incident does happen in front of him. But it looks like all is well and fair right now. Everyone's able to make it through nice and cleanly. You're on board right now with Kurt Poulter in that 37 Unified Performance Racing Ferrari as he's trying to catch up to the back bumper of that Lone Star Racing Ferrari in front of him. That's Larry Ford in that Longhorn Racing Ferrari number 44. He'll take a look to the inside as they head into the hairpin, complete the pass, and move on through the field.
They'll do what they can here to make this thing work, and it's about keeping that track in front of you and the green stuff to the side, Z, right now, which feels so hard to do at this stage of the race. There's a level of exhaustion going through these drivers and familiarity. They're making turns based on the last dozens of laps they've turned. This is the most dangerous part of the time because you can have people trying to make those places towards the end of this race, and with the last 10 minutes on the card now, it's the time where you'll make those stupid mistakes.
Certainly can be right now, as an issue right now for car number 43. I believe, if I'm saying that's the Kraft Dinner Racing car, I believe, had an incident. Oh yeah, went way off the track surface for the most part. Actually, him and it looks like car 77. That's the All Balls Racing Corvette of Jay Dargett, and those two will make contact, make synchronized spinning happen as they come through there, able to keep it going and cut through the grass and continue on their way though.
Yeah, they are so far, and that'll be a big difference for them, but still plenty of time for this to go sideways. It's certainly a messy opportunity or moment for this to be occurring.
Certainly is, especially with this late into the going. 14 and a half minutes left to go on the clock. 74 laps completed for our Revo Satellite Racing driver Paul Darling, as well as Unified Performance Racing driver Kurt Poulter, as they continue to negotiate through the hectic traffic. Of course, the traffic here is probably more crazier than Orlando right now during rush hour, I would say. But we got to talk about some movers and shakers here right now. The pneumatic number 4, Motorsports Blue, James Stacy is currently behind the wheel, is the biggest mover in P2, up 4 spots. And, Rachel, they're the cleanest car, has yet to have a single incident since the start of the race. And who's one of the big movers in GTE?
That's really impressive, honestly. That's a huge difference for them from what I've seen so far. SimHQ3 have had a big movement today. They've got 7 spots in today's race as well, which is absolutely huge for them in terms of the overall race performance. And probably our biggest mover overall there. They're currently running in 2nd place as well. So it's going to be a great day out for them and their sister car, the SimHQ Motorsports 2, who are both looking at podium finishes here. One being up 2 spots, 1-7.
Certainly is right now as we continue to watch on the battle for P2. As we see, one of the things I noticed right now in the chat is a couple of drivers were concerned when we saw that Craft Dinner Racing go through the grass, and it could cause some damage to the underbody. It's not really uncommon, though, for some damage to happen here to the underbodies of these cars that we just saw. Looks like that's Craft Racing and Tommy Lee Cogan hit the curbing a little too hard right there. So they got to take care of the car. Even though it's late in the going, they still got to bring it home in one piece.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to. Otherwise, the race is going to be real short for you in a way you really don't want it to have happen. But it's one of those things that will have to occasionally in this. You'll go off track, and it's about keeping the car, should we say, sedate until you've managed to clean those tires off, because it will build up on the tires. It will affect your grip levels, and that can have a big impact on the car's handling as it comes in and out of corners, especially at corners like Sebring, where you've not got any banking. There's no camber to really help you. It's very flat and it's very rough, so the car will be jostling, and the more it jostles, the more the car moves around and bumps, the more those wheels aren't all on the ground at the same time, which means your braking force will be significantly reduced. If you're bumping a wheel off the ground in the corner, you're going from 4 gripping wheels to possibly 3, maybe 2, because of those bumps, and that dramatically reduces your grip level, which means you can slide, spin, twirl off the track. And I don't know where twirl came from. Slide and spin were good enough, but there you go. Let's look at this. Through comes Revo with a big move there. Still passing LMP2 cars, having a fantastic day out here. 1 minute 12 ahead of 2nd place. That is insane.
Their last lap around was over 2 seconds faster than the CMS Pro Summit team. A 148.180 compared to a 150.465. I mean, to be still going that fast during this race, especially late in the going, Rachel, is a phenomenal job as we watch Lee Peterson try to see if he can catch up to Christopher Scheimeller in the CMS Pro Summit team.
Yeah, absolutely is, and it's definitely going to be one of those things that really shows this one up. But it's been a tricky run overall for them, and I think a lot of this has been the traffic factors. It's really showed a difference in how the cars can handle that.
Yeah, well, we certainly have seen the 2 leaders in each class master the lap traffic phenomenally since the drop the green flag, just taking their time and just picking the right times to make passes here as we come in the closing 10 minutes here today at Sebring, as we see our race leader, Paul Darling, get to the back bumper of a couple of GTE cars. That's the 88 of NGP Motorsports, as well as it looks like one of the Can-Am Racing BMWs. He'll rocket it past the outside, dive to the inside of another before he gets to the braking zone, and just smoothly passes those 2 BMWs.
Yeah, he absolutely does, and we're coming down to those final 5 minutes now, and it's really hitting the tempo up here. Any places people can make, they're really looking to get in this race, as SimHQ Motorsports 3 of the GTE class looking here to pass Brake Fade, who are a lap down from them, about to go down past 2nd place here. It's been a really hectic run all over this field, and we're seeing huge drop off in terms of speeds just by the nature of how aggressive this track is. It really is a track that does not take prisoners, and I think a lot of these guys are desperate for this thing to be over.
As you brought out earlier, Rachel, in the broadcast today, if you take care of your car, the car and the track will reward you with a chance of a strong finish here today. But if you roughhouse the car, try to go against the flow of the racetrack, it will, like you said, punish you severely, as we've seen multiple cars who had strong runs and strong chances to win today's race be taken out in the late going. And with 10 minutes left to go in the race, still anything is possible as they continue on here, as we work through the field right now, watching to see what our drivers can do as we watch this battle between the PG-13, there's a battle actually for fourth position between PG-13 and Kamikaze, about a 3-second gap between the two drivers, so that's going to be a battle to watch.
Absolutely, and you know how I love my analogies and examples. Trying to race against the track in a way it doesn't want you to is like trying to cut a piece of wood against the grain. It's going to go left, right, jig-jaggy, zigzaggy. You're going to end up with a really rough, nasty car. It's going to be smooth. Whereas if you cut with the grain, it's real clean. It's much easier to do. It's much better for it. And you'll see that in the racing at a track like Sebring. If you try and race against this track, it will be a rough experience. You will have an unpleasant time. If you race with its idiosyncrasies, with its little quirks, and adapt to how the track wants you to drive it, you'll go so fast.
And they are certainly going fast right now here for our race leaders as they are closing in here today. As we watch and see if there's any other battles that could brew here in the closing minutes. We are just now under 8 minutes left to go. Well, let's go look at the battle for 9th between the Bosphorus Motorsports Blue and Last Minute Racing. Koenigsegg and Mark Johnson battling it out for that position right now. Porsche versus BMW, the two German makes going head-to-head as they are approaching the hairpin here. The 57 BMW trying to close up the gap between the 29 Porsche as they head towards the hairpin. Good opportunity, but they do have an LMP2 hot on their tails. That's the 913 of Leif Peterson closing in as they come out of the hairpin through that little bit of a kink, heading down towards the back half of the course.
Yeah, they really are, and it's going to be a real close run now to the end here for some of these guys, and I think everyone's just about got their tyres left. The amount of rubber build-up, by the way, offline here is insane. So if you go off track at a stage of the race, or offline even, you're in a really rough position. That's what we haven't talked about much, is we've seen significant rubber build-up on the actual racing line here, which has made things easier, but we've also seen significant debris coming off the tyres offline, so that's a big problem with endurance racing, which we haven't really talked about, is that you often have to go offline to pass people if you're in a faster car, which puts you in those marbles and puts you in a really tricky position to keep the car straight. And we've seen some of those incidents today.
We certainly have. Some drivers have been able to capitalize on those, and others have not. As we continue to watch that battle right now for the 9th position, Johnson gets a good run out of Le Mans. He's going to be right on the back bumper. He's going to try to follow to the inside of one of the P2 cars that they'll go side by side. Bosphorus Motorsports on the outside. Last Minute Racing to the inside. Into Sunset Bend side by side. Johnson will get the lead over the Bosphorus Motorsports Blue. Hans trying to capitalize and come back, but cannot do it. And that will move Johnson up to 9th.
It certainly will. Big move for them there to get this one done, as it really pushes this thing forwards. Wow, this race has really been really busy so far for these guys. They've had a huge move, and doing it in the last seconds here is absolutely massive for them. But we're now coming down to our last 30 seconds. And there will be one more lap here because Revo just crossed the line.
Well, I think you're a little bit early right there, Rachel. It's actually showing 5.5 minutes on the clock, so we got a little bit of time.
Okay, I was looking at the wrong clock then.
Yep, we have 5.5 minutes left to go, so we're closing in towards the end of this race here, but anything can still happen. We still have a couple of more laps even. They still have to take the white flag even after that 5.5 minutes expires. But right now, we're still watching this battle for 9th as we see Paul Darling in the Revo Satellite Racing still lead the field here at Sebring International Raceway in the LMP2 and overall, and Kurt Poulter leading in the GTE class.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's been a very busy one for those guys. GTE class has been very hectic. Honestly, that first lap incident is something I think defines this race, unfortunately. The spin by Rebellion and the other LMP2 car in turn 2, on the exit of turn 2 actually, which is a blind location on that track, it changed the entire tone of the race for GTE. Not so much for the LMP2 class, but it changed everything for GTE because they came upon that in a situation where they hadn't much room to work, and it left them in a position where they were involved in a big stack up where it stopped the field essentially. So it widened gaps. I mean, we were passing traffic much earlier than we would have done necessarily because of that difference, and it just changed the entire pace of that race. It swapped our class around. It basically reversed the grid to an extent, so it really left us in an odd position.
It certainly has, and it's now allowed some drivers who may have not possibly had a shot of getting a strong finish here today that chance here late in the going, and for some drivers to make a recovery. We talked about PG-13 Racing earlier, Rachel. They were involved in that lap 1, turn 2 incident, and they fell back. They fell back outside the top 10. Now, Cameron Bidwell, Alex LaRose got it up to 4th position and holding strong over the rest of the field behind them right now. So a great run. And Can-Am Express as well. They were involved in the incident. They're now up to 7th with the Can-Am Express BMW, but they have to fight hard, though, with the Longhorn Racing Lone Star Ferrari of Brett Stevens.
Certainly will do. We had a bit of a concertina there as CMHQ2. We're just caught up with one of the back marker LMP2s getting past them there on Ullman Straight, but looking here at the 78 machine on our camera on board there, looking as they come through Cunningham. It's been an incredibly busy Longhorn Lone Star, as I try and mince my words there.
It's been a long haul for them.
85 or towards the 85. Very, very long haul for the Lone Star Longhorns. The Longhorn Racing Lone Stars. We're getting there. We're tired.
Try saying that a few times fast, and we'll let you know how you do.
Oh yes, she sells seashells on the seashore. That's another good one as well. But no, we get tired of Parade the Booth too. It's only been a 3-hour race, but it's almost kind of a sprint pace we go after these things because they're shorter events. So it tends to make things a little bit more intense for us guys up here. And I think we've had 2 breaks tonight, so it's been busy today. Big props, of course, to Ryan on the cameras for this one, and the amazing cameras we had. Who did those again, Taylor?
Well, it's none other than a close friend of ours, Dougie Beard, who does all of the camera angles for us to enjoy. And, of course, our wonderful producer, Mr. Ryan Bauer, the bearded sim racer himself, is out there trying to show and make sure everyone can enjoy the sights and sounds here at Sebring International Raceway for event number 2. Of course, myself, Taylor Burris, and Rachel Whiteford bringing you all the stories, the antics, the craziness, and the fun here for the CMS series.
Yeah, absolutely. CMS series has turned out to be a phenomenal series. The first test race was great. The first round at Daytona was amazing. Sebring has been an intense, complete flip on the head of what I thought it was going to be. This series is shaking up to be an absolute stormer of an endurance championship, and I'm very excited to be part of this up here in the commentary booth. These guys have really put on a fantastic show today.
It certainly has, and it's kind of funny, actually. Doug actually invited me to come run this series a few months ago, but when I was asked to either run the race or call the broadcast booth, I'm like, I think I'm going to call the race, because these guys are just phenomenally talented, and I love sports car and endurance racing. I feel like I have a good knack for it some days, but these guys are at a whole other level.
Absolutely. These are some of the top sim racers on the platform, and it really shows.
Certainly is, as we are now closing in on 1 minute left to go. The 1 minute warning for these drivers. So their time here at the bumps of Sebring is about to come to a close. It is still going to be Paul Darling in the Revo Satellite Racing P2 car coming around. He's coming through, I believe, the Le Mans curve, heading down the Ullman Straight now. And he's going to try and see if he can time it to where he only has to run another run. This could be the last lap, but I think he will not make it. He's got to run one more lap before the checkered flag will come out.
Yeah, he certainly will do. That's going to be our one more time for the white flag here. This will be at this time by, I believe. White flag waving.
Certainly is. White flag is going to be in the air for Paul Darling and David Williams. The domination of this racing series of CMS will continue as they look to go back-to-back here and sweep the Florida rounds here this season in the CMS. For Kurt Poulter and Justin Hess in the Unified Performance Racing Group. See, I'm even still starting to lose my voice a little bit with that. They are also looking to sweep the Florida rounds here in the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series as they continue on here in their Ferrari. A little bit of a slide, though, for Paul Darling through the hairpin. Was able to recover nicely and continue on his way. But as we look through the field right now, everyone's just trying to get to the checkered flag.
Absolutely is, and it's going to be a close run here to the end for Revo and Unified. They're just making sure they get these cars home in one piece one more time around, as I believe it will be another time still for Unified as Revo is coming up behind them, although they could just slow down here. They've got a lot of time behind them, so they could just slow down, let Revo catch up to them across the line so they can just end a lap early. That's probably what I'd do. I'm lazy, so I'd be like, oh, they're coming up behind me. Yeah, they just started the Ullman straightaway here, so if I just slow down here and let them come past me, that way I don't have to do another lap.
I agree, but here comes Paul Darling now in that beautiful fingerprint blue colors and scheme. Revo Satellite Racing, Paul Darling through Sunset Bend for the final time, out of turn 17. He is pretty much dominated from the drop of the green flag. He and David Williams will win event number 2 at Sebring International Raceway. And for
an amazing run by those guys from Revo Satellite Racing, a phenomenal run.
Waiting on the rest of the field, and looks like CMS Pro Summit Team and Imperial Motorsports, they are still on a lap behind, actually. As a matter of fact, they're now coming either to the hairpin or the hangar straight for those two drivers. So they still have a little bit ways to go. But as we keep an eye on Kurt Poulter in that Unified Racing Performance Ferrari, he just left the hairpin, so he has a little bit of a ways to go. Waiting on the rest of the field to work their way through the start-finish line here at Sebring, as we just saw our race winner Paul Darling and David Williams take home the checkered flag. Here comes CMS Pro Summit Team of Jordan Johnson and Chris Scheimeller coming home in second, working through some lap traffic. They're heading down the Ullman Straight for the final time. As we keep an eye through the field right now. And
CMS Pro Summit out of Sunset here.
Here they come out of
final time. This will be them for second place in LMP2, and they're very happy to finish.
Certainly is a great performance from them. And here comes the Imperial Motorsports team. This is the shake of Leif Peterson and Christopher Pies. I'm pretty sure Mr. Chip's going to be happy with that performance. Another podium finish for the team as they come across the start-finish line to round out the third position. And now it's just waiting on the GTE race leader. Here he comes. Kurt Poulter, Justin Hess will go back-to-back in GTE.
Pretty well, fantastic run from them, as I believe we've got SimHQ Motorsports 3 have crossed the line. They're a lap down from your race leader in second place. That's how spread out the GTE field was. They're on a warm down lap themselves, I believe. SimHQ 2 also on their warm down laps as well. Honestly, a phenomenal run we've seen today. Absolutely amazing from what we saw in this one. A hectic, busy, amazing drive. As actually, no, they're actually still coming around. They're not actually on a cooldown yet. They're not finished yet. So they're trying to get that line. I thought they were on a warm down lap, but they're just cruising here with lots of time to spare behind them. As it's a sister car behind them. I think they're trying to let their sister car catch up, perhaps, but they also seem to be at reduced speed somewhat, perhaps. I'm not sure whether they've actually qualified as crossed the line here, but SimHQ3 now coming through Sunset for the final time. This will be our second place finisher, Paul Hale, along with Connor Denny, and they're heading to pit road, so they actually had already crossed that line. So we'll go through your full field rundown, I think, Taylor.
I agree with you 100% with that, Rachel. And let's give you the full field rundown. Revo Satellite Racing, Paul Darling and David Williams will win the race here today at Sebring, followed by the CMS Pro Summit team in second. Third place will go to Imperial Motorsports Shape, rounding out the top three, as they will be the last car on the lead lap. The first car one lap down will be the Pneumatic Motorsports team of blue and purple, coming home in fourth and fifth, followed by TNT Racing Gold in sixth position. Seventh position goes to Team Cosmos with the Craft Dinner Racing team in eighth. Ninth position goes to Rebellion Racing in third, with the SimHQ Motorsports 1 rounding out your top 10. In 11th position, you will find the Penguin RC Complex SimWorks team coming home in 11th, followed by TNT Racing Carbon in 12th. DDM Racing will come home in 13th, followed by the Wildfire Racing Dragon in 14th. GTE will have the Unified Performance Racing team coming home 16th, as well as overall as your GTE race winners. WWZ Red 17th overall in class, 16th in class. Second goes in 18th, second in class, 18th overall, SimHQ Motorsports 3. It's a double podium for SimHQ, as SimHQ Motorsports 2 will come home in third in class and 19th overall, with Kamikaze fourth in class and 20th overall. Rachel?
Yeah, they certainly are. Someone got a little excited there as started doing the GTE class as well. Fourth in class, Kamikaze coming home today after a great run with PG13 in 5th place. 6th place goes to Renault Alpine Racing, with 7th to Can-Am Express. Longhorn Racing Lone Star in 8th place, with Last Minute in 9th. Bosphorus Motorsports Blue in 10th overall in the field there. 11th place, Team Break Fade, with Can-Am Canucks in 12th. NGP Motorsports in 13th, with All Balls in 14th. 15th going to Longhorn Racing. 16th to MMTR, Can-Am Racing in 17th, and Triple R Racing in 18th. 19th and no starter was Team Leonard Burke.
And with that, that is your full field rundown of event number 2 here at Sebring, as we are going to now bring up our LMP2 class winners and overall winners, David Williams and Paul Darling, as they come up into the booth. Gentlemen, back-to-back wins, you sweep the season here in Florida. How do you feel?
I always feel great when I got a teammate like Paul to bring me home. All I know is I got to hand him the car in one piece and he'll bring the win home. So always feels good to have a teammate like that.
Now, gentlemen, how difficult was it negotiating through the lap traffic? As we know, Sebring is notoriously tight, difficult, and bumpy. How was the conditions for you out there negotiating through the lap traffic?
For me, it was quite easy. I think we had pretty good pace here, so we were able to be very patient. Didn't have to push anything at all. So let you see what Paul thinks. But for me, it was very relaxed.
No, yeah. Once David gave me the car and we had that gap, when you can be more patient with the traffic, when you have a buffer, it's a lot easier to get through.
Well, we get ready now to head to Le Mans in March. Your thoughts on how you look forward to heading across the pond over into France in a month's time and continuing, possibly going a hat trick 3 in a row?
That's the plan. Well, I think we have a good setup already for Le Mans, and I have pretty good pace there, and Paul's got pace over me, so I think we'll be very competitive. You know, not going to call the shot or anything, but I think we'll be competitive as long as we hit our marks and, you know, we have a little bit of luck on our side, as you always have to have in racing.
Of course. And before we let you go, is there anyone you'd like to say thank you to?
Well, once again, thanks to Paul. You know, like I said, me and him race a lot together. He's a great teammate. And thanks to Revo Satellite Racing, you know, those fellas help us put together these setups and give us competitive equipment to be in. And just a pleasure being part of their team.
Yeah, thanks. It's a really good running with David here. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for CMS for putting this series on.
And of course, once again, congratulations to both of you. We look forward to seeing you in a month's time at Le Mans. And of course, that is our race winners, the Revo Satellite Racing team of David Williams and Paul Darling. And Rachel, your GTE winners have come up to join you, Justin Hess and Kurt Poulter.
I certainly am glad to see them here, of course, as Unified Performance Racing, sorry, I always make a mistake with that one. You're Justin Hess and Kurt Poulter here. Guys, you won last time out, you won this time after a strong race here today. What was it for you guys today? How was this?
It's pretty good. I mean, the car was great and we got really lucky at the start. So we just kept going. What'd you say?
I believe you guys rolled up on that as you were starting your lap. Turn 2, first lap. You come around that corner and see that. Tell me what happened.
I mean, the track was blocked for us, and, you know, I just went wide, got lucky, and was lucky enough to make it through, but the rest of the field wasn't too lucky. So it's unfortunate for them that the races were over so soon, for the most part.
It shook things up significantly. Do you think that was a factor in how easy a race you guys had today, or do you think that perhaps Sebring was just a track that was suited to your guys?
I mean, I think it was a huge factor in it. If they were with us, I think it'd been a competitive race and a fun time, but, you know, they probably lost at least a minute in time just then.
Sure enough. Kurt, to you. This race, the traffic seemed to get a lot more aggressive towards the end of the race. A lot of drivers were tired, worn out with it being a difficult track to drive. you think it made it any more nerve-wracking trying to hold on to the race lead?
Yeah, I mean, we had a nice gap, thanks to Justin for that, of course. But yeah, I mean, the traffic was, I don't know, it made me a little nervous in a few spots. There were some moves that I definitely wouldn't have made if I was on the other side of that coin. But, you know, it is what it is. I wasn't in their specific, you know, position. I don't know if it didn't appear they were chasing somebody down, but there were a couple moves that I probably would have held off on.
Certainly very much a energetic race there. Anybody you guys would like to give a shout out to? Any sponsors you'd like to thank, Justin and Kurt?
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Justin.
I'd just like to thank CMS, Penguin RC, and Complex SimWorks for putting this event on. It's been a fun time, and hopefully the next one is even better.
Yeah, we thank you guys for the broadcast, and obviously CMS, Evolve Range Solutions, Obsessed Garage, and Turn In Concepts are all great companies that we work with.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much to you guys for joining us. Justin Hess and Kurt Poulter from Unified Performance Racing winning today's GTE class. And before we go, we'd just like to, of course, give a big shout out to Taylor, of course, the 4 sponsors, to Penguin RC, to Raceware, to Gridfinder, and to Complex SimWorks for helping to bring you this series along with CMS themselves. Taylor.
It certainly is. And of course, we look forward to seeing all of you again on March 21st. We head over to probably what would be the more appropriate word?
Yeah,
probably the pinnacle.
Endurance racing.
I would say that too. The pinnacle of sports car and endurance racing, Circuit de la Sarre at Le Mans. We will be going there on March 21st, of course, taking the LMP2 and GTE cars there to do battle once again. Again, that is on March 21st. But as now, it is time we come to a close. For myself, Taylor Burris, Rachel Whiteford, of course, my co-host here today, our wonderful producer, Ryan Bauer, and of course, the camera work done by Dougie Beard. Thank you so much for watching event number 2 of the CMS iRacing Team Endurance Series, and we will see you again at Le Mans.